Hello and welcome to Maximal Fire. I'm Alex.
And I'm Johnny.
And on today's episode, we're going to be doing the Loyalist Legions tier list. Podcast recording day, Johnny. How are you?
I'm good. I'm fed. Dinner has been had. I'm ready to go.
So we're expecting a lot of kind of repeating veggies kind of coming up and sort of burping through the mic, are we?
Yeah, there's going to be some HD burping this episode. So
what is
headphone
this?
users, be aware.
What is going on though, Johnny? Like, this is we're in March, just.
Mm-hmm.
And we're about to record the third podcast of the year. That's like bordering on regular.
Oh my god, we've actually done it so far.
So far, touch words. Yeah, no, it's you can tell we've taken things seriously because we've actually got a reoccurring invite in our calendars now to remind us to record podcasts. So yeah. Serious big time podcast producers that we are now, apparently.
We have a schedule like The Simpsons.
We don't have a plan.
No.
Don't have a plan, but we've got a schedule. So I mean that's all right, isn't it?
That's all right, yeah.
Yes. So today we are going to be taking a look at the Legions Imperialis Loyalist Legions tier list. So this is a follow-up to our Traitor Legions tier list that we did last year, where we took a look at the rules and lore for all of the Traitor Legions, and now we're going to do it again for all of the Loyalist Legions. So similar to last time, we're going to be doing a very familiar format if you have seen the previous episode. If you haven't seen the previous episode, then you can click on the link, which I will stick above, and you can check that one out as well. A few things changed between sort of now and when we last did the tier list. The big one was that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, came the Formations of Legend, and Formations of Legend we didn't really, well, because they weren't out, they weren't factored into our previous episode that we did. So we ummed and ahed, and we took a bit of feedback from the community as well as to whether or not you wanted us to include what we know so far about the Loyalist Legions of Formations of Legends and try and factor that into our tier list, or just do it exactly the same as before and do it just on what we see in the main rulebook. And the decision was made that we will do it exactly the same. So we've got a nice side-by-side. We're talking just rulebook at this point. I think as well it would be unfair to kind of factor in Formations of Legend, considering that there's only really a handful of them that have come out at this particular point in time, especially for the Loyalists.
Yeah, not all legions have them, and no. I feel like all are strong enough to move their respected legions up in the rankings quite significantly. So yeah. I think it's a fairer playing field for them at their base level to be ranked together from the what is now current rulebook.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm sure that our opinions will offend some people because at the end of the day, there's a good chance that at some point we're going to slag off your favourite Legion, and we can't make everything S tier, but this is obviously just based on our opinions, how we play the game as well. Like, we probably put stock in certain attributes possibly more than other people might do. Your style of gameplay might be slightly different to how we play, so that may well kind of impact like your own personal opinion of the tier list. So this is just our opinion, and we're also going to be taking a look at the lore for some of those legions. So we're just going to have a casual chat about every legion, and try and kind of think of some of our favourite moments that we have from the Horus Heresy series. Again, focusing on Heresy era at this point. And again, will probably upset even more people. at that point. As somebody inevitably gets put in D tier, I've already got a candidate for D tier, and it's the only reason that this person or this legion, in my opinion, is D tier, is because I can't stand the books that they're in. So if you can guess what that might be,
I think I have an idea. Yeah,
and which legion might have books which boil my piss, then then see if you can get it right by later on. You should stick your kind of guesses in the comments and see later on if you were accurate. But before we get into that, just a couple of bits of news. Obviously, we can't do the show without our patrons. They are the lifeblood of what keeps Maximal Fire going. And so, as a patron, one of the perks is we give you guys a shout out to everybody who's newly subscribed to our Patreon. So, with that, since we last recorded our last episode, we've got 3 new patrons. Thank you very much, guys. So a big shout out to Warwick Keane, Richard Warmington, and Davey Baldwin. So thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate your support. And remember, you can support us from as little as £1. Or if you want to just give us a little tip, apparently, you can do super thingies on YouTube. I forget. It happens.
Oh yeah,
what are they called? Super thanks.
Super chat. Super thanks.
It's super thanks. I always think of Super Hands from. Did you ever watch? Peep Show. Peep Show.
Peep Show.
Not Peep Show.
Super Hands. No, Peep Show.
It is Peep Show.
No.
Tell you what, that crack is really Moorish.
Yeah, whenever I say super thanks, I just see super hands. But that's a way as well that you can kind of like tip the show. We've had a few people do it. It's always been a surprise every single time that it's happened because I forget it exists. So thank you everybody who has contributed on through YouTube and the super thanks, and of course to our patrons as well. So right, I think we're going to get straight into it now. We're going to break this up into 2 little parts with our sponsors section in the middle. Let's talk some Dark Angels, shall we? So we're going to start with the rules, and I am going to read you all a bedtime story.
That doesn't sound right.
What?
In the Loyalist Legions Ranked episode, Dark Angels?
I used to be one of those guys, right? Who were like, but I've grown up, Johnny. I mean, come on.
I want to be so perfectly clear that the only reason I still keep saying this is because of the amount that it winds up dark. I don't give a shit. I don't care. I think it's kind of cool that they've got traitorous elements, but it winds up the Dark Angel players.
Like 20 years later, it still boils people's piss. And yeah, I've used that twice already. I think that's my new favourite kind of phrase. But I say settle in for story time because they have by far the most lines of rules in old Legions Imperialis rulebook. And they have the special rule called Formations of the Hexagrammaton, because they like to have fancy words like that. So at the start of the battle, before any detachment is deployed, determine which Dark Angels formations contain a total of 3 or more different detachment types. Dedicated transports are ignored for the purposes of this calculation. Any formation that meets these requirements gains one of the following benefits chosen by the controlling player from the list below. All detachments within the formation that contain only Dark Angels infantry gain the Phosphex and Implacable special rules. All detachments within the formation that contain only cavalry models gain the Outflank special rule. All detachments within the formation that contain only vehicle models gain the Nimble special rule. If a formation has a dedicated transport, the model types gain the relevant special rules, but the transports do not. So, for example, a Dark Angels formation contains 2 Legion Tactical detachments, a Legion Dreadnought detachment, and a Legion Predator detachment. Therefore, it meets the requirements of the formations of the Hexagrammaton special rule and chooses one of the special rules to apply. If the formation had 2 Legion Tactical detachments and 2 Legion Dreadnought detachments, it would not meet the requirements, even if the tactical detachments had dedicated transports.
And breathe.
yeah, the fact that it needs an example goes to kind of show you it's on the more complicated sort of lines of the rules. Certainly, when you'll see compared to others. But yeah, so let's pick that apart. So it needs 3 different detachment types. So what does that rule out? Well, that rules out things. It probably rules out like your armored companies, where you will have vehicles and flyers, and I don't think in most they don't have. I think it's usually just air support and versions of tanks, which are vehicles, especially because there's no super heavy tanks in those armored detachments. What it does favour is things like the
Demi Company.
Demi Company is the obvious one, and the Bastion formations. Those sort of quite versatile formations where you can take some infantry, you can take some walkers, some dreadnoughts or something. You could take some battle tanks supporting, and so yeah, you're probably, if you want to get the most out of this rule, you're probably going to be pushed down those kind of mixed formations, and those special rules in sort of isolation. So say for instance you've got yourself a demi company, that's probably the easiest one. So you've got a bunch of Marines, probably got some assault Marines in there, maybe some rhinos, maybe some predators, and a dreadnought. Let's say a Leviathan dreadnought. So with if you chose to upgrade your infantry within that, then you give them Phosphex and you give them Implacable. And Implacable means that you basically can choose when you run away from combat. And Phosphex means that you ignore the CAF bonus that a defending garrisoned unit would get. So what that does mean is that if you're assaulting, it's good for close combat. If you are planning on doing close combat,
amazing on assault marines with
exactly
packs and their jump pack bonus against buildings.
Exactly,
you can just bunny hop across the battlefield and take out infantry clusters that are just holding up in buildings.
Yeah, that was exactly the point that I was going to make. You're getting your bonus for assaulting a garrison building with the jump packs. You're denying, I think it's Civitas, you get a bonus +2. So normal Marines holding a building on like a +3. So you're basically taking them down to a +1. And if I recall correctly,
jump packs Marines get +1 against buildings when they charge.
But I think they start with a +3 basic, don't they? The assault Marines, which means that you'd be on a +5 assaulting Marines. And even if you lose, you can choose to just stay where you are.
Stay stuck in, yeah.
Just stay stuck in and not move. So yeah, it's very, very versatile in that respect. And I think that it's something that you might want to think about building around if you chose infantry. You probably want to be having quite an aggressive assault formation. So a reliance on assault Marines, or maybe just normal tactical Marines in some sort of dedicated transport. Obviously, the best for that would probably be something like a Land Raider or a Spartan, where you've got the assault ramps and you can charge out. Otherwise, very, very a good rule there. The other option is that you can gain outflank on cavalry. Now, there's only a handful of cavalry units in the game so far, and I think that is if you wanted to put into those detachments in the Vanguard slot. There's things like jet bikes and outrider bikers, and that gives you a similar, like a light version of what you get from the Sky Hunter phalanx. So not to be underestimated. A bit more specific, because I don't see people take a lot of jet bikes. Excuse me, it's me repeating my dinner on the microphone rather than you now. don't see a lot of jet bikes outside of the Sky Hunter. To me, it kind of feels very much like a go big or go home with those, and you dedicate onto them. But it might catch somebody unaware. It's itself a tactic, push forwards, and you're immediately going to be threatening the sides. You don't have infiltrate or anything like that, like some legions do, but it's kind of the next best thing, I guess, to put pressure on objectives. And then the last one is you get nimble on your tanks. And this is a rule which, when we started playing LI, very, very rarely came up. But with the introduction of things like the Saber tank and your spider bots, you kind of start appreciating actually how good the nimble special rule is, being able to move through cover without penalty, move through obstructions rather without penalty, and also then be able to sit in ruins and get minuses to hit you, taking advantage of the cover. It's a pretty strong rule. And also, going back to what we were saying about assaulting out of tanks, normally that's a sort of obstacle which would slow you down to deliver your Marines into combat, but you're just not going to care. At that point, you're just going to ride over. The only thing that's going to get in your way is blocking. So, yeah, I think for me, the first and, well, to be honest, they're all pretty good. And I think there's application for all of them. And it gives you a lot of versatility. And you don't need to decide this until the start of the game as well. So you can choose how you're going to do it, sort of as and when you need to make a decision before you see your opponent. You know what? When I was talking about this, or thinking about this rather, talking to myself in my sleep, I had the old Dark Angels there as a solid A.
A for Angel. Okay.
The more I'm thinking about it, the more I think that it might be S.
Ooh.
I feel like the versatility that you get with that rule is quite significant.
It makes it hard to build the list wrong, because you're going to probably accidentally make a lot of lists that meet this criteria anyway.
If you're not going to take, as long as you build around it, and it's not like the Demi Company is a bad choice.
No, God, no.
Or even the Bastion formation is a bad choice. They're both good formations, and there may even be more which I haven't even thought about. Like, there's quite a few formations out at this point in time. There's probably more where you could fit walkers, tanks, and flyers or something in the list. But it allows you to look at your opponent's force and go, what are they going to do? Okay, well, in this game, I've got the combat advantage, so I'm going to throw it at my infantry, and I'm going to take care of their infantry by having better charging options than they do. Or I want to push forward really quickly. I'll take the nimble on my tanks. The only thing it might make you do is, depending on how bothered you are about having full versatility across all of it, is taking some skimmers in that Vanguard slot. Whether you take a detachment of them just so you can apply this one rule to that one unit, or maybe two detachments, if I can't remember exactly how many you get in one of those. But I mean,
having the option is good.
Having the option is great, because if they're pushing forwards, like against your spider bots, for instance, I had to sit at the back and basically suck it up until I broke free and kind of started pushing against the objectives. So if I had a unit of those which went, you know what, fine, you push forwards, I'm going to bring those guys in the back and I'm going to start threatening your backline objective. So what are you going to do? You're going to leave something back there to defend against it, knowing that I've got these guys?
one group of spider bots that's not in your lines.
Precisely, right? So I think it gives you a lot of options. It gives you a lot of things to work around. I think it was going to be A. I think it's S. Let's talk lore.
Okay. I'm inclined to agree with the S.
You come around to my way of thinking. You weren't sure at the start.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure. We'll have to revisit it once we've done the list, just to make sure.
Okay.
I think in contrast to the rest, it probably is an S.
Well, we'll see where we end up. Like we say, we always say, "Oh, we'll jiggle them around," and we don't really do that very often. But
No,
who knows?
No.
Who knows? We'll see where we end up.
Okay, so Dark Angels Lore. They are the first Legion. Their Primarch is Lion L. Johnson, not Lionel Johnson. They come
He's dancing
from
on the ceiling, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. They come from the world of Caliban. They are your Knights of the Grail, kind of Holy Order-esque
Big King
vibes.
Arthur, aren't they?
Very Arthurian legend.
Yeah.
Whereas other legions embody like the kind of crusade vibes. This is a little bit more mythical, romantic.
Slay the dragon in our ridiculous forest.
Yeah, literally, right?
Of Griblies.
They quite literally have like an enchanted forest as their home world that's just full of what is essentially chaos infused, alien monsters. And then they have the little funny men that follow them around that aren't exactly,
we don't talk about those,
corporeal beings that carry their gear for them. They're cool. Obviously there's the whole traitor storyline, spoiler alert, with Luther. They are obviously the first Legion, so they've got quite a lot of what's the word for it, traditions. They're very traditional, so it makes for interesting reading.
But they're not sort of traitors in the traditional sense, are they? Because like at least to start with, Luther's motives are mostly kind of like they've kind of, why are they putting themselves out there for the Emperor? Like they need to focus on Caliban. They were abandoned by Johnson as he went off, and he was left in charge of Caliban. And over the kind of the years of Johnson being away, he started having these dark thoughts, which obviously led them down that path. Which then he came back, didn't he, Johnson, at the latter days, and destroyed Caliban. And then the Rock became their kind of fortress monastery in later years. But there's some really cool, like, especially in the Siege of Terra, like there's, again, spoilers, if you haven't read all of the Siege of Terra books, won't try and give away too much. But, there is this whole, very early on, one company, I think it is, of the Dark Angels finds itself arriving in Sol, and nobody else has turned up with them.
Yeah.
They're like, where's the rest? And they're like, I think we're it.
They bump into the phalanx, don't they?
Yeah, they bump into the phalanx and the ridiculous Emperor's, what do they call it? A flagship. I forget what they call the actual flagship. And there's they decide that what they need to do more than anything is get down there and turn the Astronomicon back on because somebody's not paid the electricity bill, and the lights
that bill
gone
is souls.
Yeah, and so they get there. They manage to persuade the fleet, which is hiding out in the Sol system because they're completely outclassed by the traitor fleet, which has turned up.
And they're kind of there to extract the Emperor as well, right?
Yeah, and basically they go, we're going down there, give us something. There's this great scene where like this one company of, I think it's like 100 Dark Angels, like make planet fall and then start assaulting the Hollow Mountain where the Astronomicon is sort of housed, so to speak. And then they manage to take it over, and there's a big fight, and then Typhus turns up to try and take it back. And then, ta-da! Luther's all of a sudden there in the middle of everything. Spoiler. And, he's still very much, even at those points, you're still not overly sure of his loyalties, but there's definitely cracks which are starting to appear. I personally think that the Dark Angels suffered in the early lore. I found them like a bit of a sort of side quest style reading when going through some of their books. But by the time of Unremembered Empire and Imperium Secundus, where Johnson with Gilliman and Sanguinius have like established Sanguinius as like the second prime, the new emperor.
The emperor enthroned, yeah.
Yeah, because they think that Sol is lost. It is quite interesting. Well, what's your opinion on the Dark Angels?
They get shit on a lot. I think their lore is interesting, but all Legion lore takes inspiration from stuff, right? Like real world stuff. It is quite heavy-handed with the Dark Angels.
You mean like a bit too derivative?
A bit too derivative, but also, this is Warhammer, who the hell cares? But if we're being completely, putting it in a vacuum, I want to say like high B. It's just there. Yeah, there's not.
Well, it's going to be a B. It's to be, or not to be a B.
Yeah, but just understand that it's almost an A. They're cool, but like they just suffer from this. Whenever they turn up, it's very. Or are they going to betray the Loyalists, or are they not going to betray the Loyalists? For a lot of the scenes in some of the books.
I think I agree.
Alpha Legion do that better.
Yeah, I think I agree with a B, because I feel like the Dark Angels, their interesting lore kind of really starts right at the end of the Horus Heresy and into 40k. So they become a much more interesting legion by the time of 40k, where they've got things like the Rock and who's asleep at the center of the Rock, and the Watchers, and the hunt for the Fallen and all that kind of stuff. I personally feel that's where their lore starts getting really interesting. But you don't really, there's almost like token efforts to kind of introduce them into the story early on in the Heresy novels. So while all of the rest of the legions are getting really interesting things, really interesting books, like these guys kind of just a bit on the fringes.
It's a very like in a far off rock towards the Arsender space. There is this little story is going to take place, but it's very self-contained within Caliban. I like Caliban as a planet. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool concept, but there's just not a lot, like you said, in the Heresy really up until the later parts.
Okay, let's move on, shall we? We've got to skip ahead a couple of legions because they are number 1, number 2 Expunged, number 3 Emperor's Children, number 4 Iron Warriors. So we are straight up to the 5th Legion, the White Scars. And the White Scar special rule is, by contrast, very, very short compared to the Dark Angels. They have the ability Born in the Saddle. So all White Scars models with the Jink X special rule improve their Jink save, the number shown in that bracket, by 1. I.e. a model with the Jink 6 would become a Jink 5, etc., to a maximum of 3+. So, well, what to say about that? Right, so the Sky Hunter phalanx obviously exists, which is lots of jet bikes, lots of speeders. All of those things have, I think most of them have got like Jink 6, 6+ in it. I want to say one might even have a 5+. But, what that effectively does for those guys is would give those Outriders, those jet bikes, those speeders, it's effectively a 5+ invulnerable save.
Mm-hmm.
So they save as well as normal infantry, but you can't get rid of it, which is okay. And obviously, when you get things like the flyers, things like the Xiphon, as an example, I'm just trying to find. I think that's a 5-up, which becomes a 4-up, or maybe it's even better than that. No, it's a 5. That has a 5-up jink. Storm Eagle 5-up jink. Thunderhawk gunship 5-up jink. So those become 4-up jinks, which is at that point a little bit more substantial, I think. You've basically got a 4-up invulnerable save. So like most of the time, you'll be using your armor, unless you're going to be taking incoming fire from something with quite a heavy AP. So if you got hit by a lucky volcano cannon shot or something at a storm eagle, it would be just gone. Or even against a Thunderhawk, it'd just be gone. But you are going to be getting a 4-up, effectively invulnerable save, and that's not bad. I don't think that is bad.
A lot more useful on the bikes.
A lot more, but you are really kind of shoehorned into a direction.
But it's the white scars.
It is the white scars. Would you just want to run tons and tons of jet bikes? And if you do, and why would you not? Then I think it's pretty good. It's okay. Yeah. It's nothing flashy. You're just always getting your 5-up armor save, essentially, which is kind of fine. But then they die just as easily as normal Marines if they had, if they weren't hit by big heavy weapons. So it's okay, but it's still only a 1 in 3 chance of your guys not dying, or a 50-50 chance of your flyers not dying. I wanted to do White Scars as my first Legion, and I've kind of come to the opinion on these guys that there are certain legions which are great for your main force, and there are certain legions which are really, really good as a one formation support act to your main force. And I feel like the White Scars kind of fall into that support act category. Like I would take some Sky Hunters to augment my Imperial Fists if I wanted to take some jet bikes, because if I'm going to take some jet bikes, I might as well take the best version of those jet bikes that I can, because I'm not going to get any bonuses for them from my Imperial Fist rule, so I might as well give them something which they can get an advantage from.
Or aerial assault as well, bringing some aircraft into a
aerial assault. But again, that's a lot of infantry there, and the infantry aren't getting any benefits to that. It's only the flyers, and only getting the flyers in. I've not had a lot of trouble. Again, it might just be who I play against, but flyers. The thing, like with flyers, unless you're depositing people, like you need to get them where you need to get them, and you're going to be kind of like running the gauntlet a little bit with the anti-aircraft fire and stuff. Things like your Xiphons. You can do a lot of damage while still remaining out of range of the things which are likely to hurt you. So it's quite hard unless you're dogfighting against other flyers. It's quite hard to kind of keep that, to shoot them where your jinx save would come in. I think it just makes it a little bit more reliable getting those airborne assault units in. It makes the Sky Hunter phalanx a little bit more, a little bit more survivable. So, with that in mind, I had these down as a C.
Oof. I think you're being too generous.
You think I'm being too generous?
I think you're being too generous.
I think that there's worse, and I need to provide a bit of a kind of But let's see where we go, right? Because we might end up moving these around. But see, like I say, it's good. For me, I would run this as, again, I can hear the comments screaming already. I would run these guys as an attachment to my main force to do a job, to Sky Hunter Phalanx pressure those objectives, or deliver some tactical marines deep into enemy territory. You compare it with the Dark Angels one. I don't think it's any comparison really. So I'm gonna go see. Lore, Jagatai Khan.
Lore. Jagatai Khan is the Primarch of the 5th Legion. They come from Chagoris. They very much have a Mongol cavalry vibe to them, in both like culture and design.
And certainly kind of in their sort of appearance in the books, very kind
books,
of like Oriental styles, big traditional kind of long mustaches, and like you saw from like the Mongol Empire. Yeah, and
some really cool scenes. The one that immediately comes to mind, obviously, is the one against Death Guard and Mortarion versus Jagatai. That is just
the Lionsgate Spaceport.
Yeah, the Lionsgate Spaceport. That is quite a scene.
I mean, even ignoring like the build up to all of that.
Yeah,
like them getting to Earth in the first place is quite interesting. Jagatai was like a big unknown for Horus, because him and Horus were tight. Like they were proper bros. And I think Horus was quite complacent and just assumed that Jagatai would come to his side. And it was quite a surprise when he basically said, "No, do one, mate. That's not me."
I mean, a few of them did. I think they spent, a good chunk of them were traitorous for a bit.
Yeah, well, there was like a schism, wasn't there, where a big chunk of them wanted to side with Horus, and the other side didn't, and they were outcast. And then latterly, they realized effectively their mistake, and they came back to Jagatai and tried to apologize, and they essentially were accepted back in, but they became almost like Suicide Squad. Their job was to just throw themselves at the hardest things and try and regain their honor. And there's there's one book where they discover they're trying to get back to Earth, and they're fighting through, like, Eidolon is just a pain in Jagatai's arse, isn't he?
Lord Commander Eidolon, yeah.
And again, there's scuffles with the Death Guard as well, and they're just getting harassed, and Horus in the end is just like, just keep them away from Earth, and they have to find this way of getting back to Earth as quickly as they can, and they find this, it's almost like it's one of the Emperor's projects to create like a human version of it's like the Webway, isn't it? And it was designed to have sort of similarly to, I think, what he had planned for the Golden Throne. You put a powerful psyker on a, install them into the facility, and they would allow fleets to transfer, between vast spaces, and that's what they do. But they're one of the 3 legions who are predominantly defending the walls at the gates of Terra, and the sally out of the palace to go retake the Lionsgate Spaceport, which is this spaceport which they need to try and secure. But most importantly, that's where Mortarion is based himself. There's just this amazing kind of set piece where they bring down this orbital plate to kind of screen this cavalry charge from orbital fire. And they've got like Imperial armored troopers, in their Lehman Russ, going out there with, bikers next to him. And there's another great scene as well where, he's just like, just let me do my thing. Just let me do my thing. And the guys are like seeing this sort of unstoppable wall of Death Guard coming towards the walls, and then like out comes old Jagatai on his jet bikes, and they do like this ridiculous drive-by and just rip the Death Guard to pieces. That's what I feel is missing from the game. Like, why not give like
that and then compare it to +1 chink? It's like, oh, come on.
No, like, if you want to build it around jet bikes, make the jet bikes better. Give them +1 calf.
Yeah, +1 calf on the charge.
That's all. It's just something like that to just make them a bit more kind of like, because they wield these massive, great big glaive things, like, and there's so much close combat in the books. That's what is missing. That martial finesse is not apparent in the rules, in the rule book anyway. But that final fight with Mortarion is just
so good. So good, so cinematic. I think a lot of our discussions are probably going to be based around the Siege of Terra, because it's just a real kind of culmination of all of the novels. But I think what's really interesting, the White Scars are very, we must be constantly moving. We must fly free. We can't be caged up. We are like a bird. We can't, be put in a cage. And they're being forced to defend Terra, and obviously, play an Imperial Fist game and hide behind the walls and defend where they can, occasionally getting to, ride out and ride back again. So that scene where they are like truly unleashed is just the like culmination of books and books and books of them waiting to go and like desperate to go, and Jagatai arguing with his remaining loyalist brothers about wanting to go. It's very, very cool.
How cool though, Johnny? Are we talking?
See, the thing is, right, all of my memories of them are for Siege of Terra, and I don't know whether the rest of the books line up. I reckon B, and I know that's harsh, I know. I don't think it's fair to talk about Dark Angels as very, stereotypical for like knights. If we're not also looking at the White Scars as well, I think it is.
But you would put them the same.
Only because I feel like the other books in the series are relatively, I'm not going to say forgettable, but
Brotherhood of the Storm.
Yeah.
What's the other one? Is it War in Heaven?
War in Heaven, yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking of the other legions we've got to go. Put them in front of Dark Angels on the B, and we can, unless you are strongly opposed and want to put them A. I don't think they're S.
I agree. I don't think they're S. For me, they're A.
For you, they're A.
I think so. But
who
you're in charge of the lore rankings.
Okay, all right. We're going to keep it on B.
Let's keep it on B, and then we're going
to have a final review. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on to the 6th Legion then, shall we, with the Space Wolves. So, Space Wolves, dog boys, have preternatural sense. Enemy detachments with the Infiltrate special rule cannot be deployed within 16 inches of a Space Wolf model. In addition, an enemy model with the Outflank special rule may not be placed on the battlefield within 8 inches of any Space Wolves model when arriving from reserve, unless it is arriving from its own battlefield edge. That's it. So,
I mean, the obvious point, right, is that they're good as a...
The ability is brilliant.
Yeah, but not for an entire army.
In in the current meta where infiltration happens a lot, that is a great rule to have. However, what happens if your opponent has no infiltrating models? Then you have no special rules whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't stop deep striking. So things like drop pod assaults are still on the cards. Things like the subterranean assaults still on the cards. Things like the Sky Hunter phalanx is relatively on the cards, although it does restrict your outflank ability. You know, you can still probably get some way up the board. But if I knocked points from the White Scars for having a pretty limited sort of rule set, and for being what a formation add-on ability, I think I have to do the same for Space Wolves.
I think so.
I'll tell you, I run these guys. I have Space Wolves in with my Imperial Fists, and I take the minimum amount of Space Wolves possible. I take 3 detachments in an allied Space Wolf demi company, purely to get that rule off, and it cost me 130 points for the privilege. So I just space those out the front. It stops people from infiltrating on my lines, and I've paid 130 points for an army buff.
It's lame, right? Like
if I spend 130 points and my opponent doesn't take infiltrators, well, I've still got 3 units of infantry that I can use to take objectives and stuff.
Yeah.
But I've only wasted 130 points on that ability instead of an entire army losing its entire points. Yes, you could probably be a little bit more efficient and really block off everything if they're all, like that. But that rule on its own, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And if they had something else to go with it, something which kind of like reinforced their sort of more primal nature, or their combat expertise, maybe again something to do with combat, or something which made it harder for them to run away, or a rule which was based around them being the legion which was sent to kill other legions.
This is my biggest issue with it, right? It's just lazy and boring. Why, when you think of Space Wolves, you don't think of preternatural sense. That's every Space Marine.
It's a bunch of sniffy boys at the front.
It's a bunch of sniffy. That's basically what they're saying is, they can smell the enemy coming like a dog does. When, sure, yeah, cool, that works. But like, also, come on. These guys are monsters in melee. You know, they are your kind of like Viking warriors, right? Like, these guys should be, not equal in combat ability to some of the other legions. They should be better. They
could have done something like, as well as this being situational, you could take, they also had something like, I don't know, some kind of bonus against other legions. If you're fighting an opponent which has, you're fighting against a legion detachment, you get a bonus of some sort for doing that.
Which again,
just something.
Still requires you to be going up against a specific army, but at least it's more exciting, in my opinion, than this.
Yeah, I don't want to downplay it. Right, it is very, very, very good rule.
That's the juxtaposition. You could easily take it in every game, and that would be a very strategic, thing to do. And if you take something in every game, it's probably pretty strong. But then also, as a army rule, you're not really playing the army, right?
I mean, these more than anybody, I am hoping beyond all hope, gain some kind of really cool formation of legend, which does something that makes these guys worth taking, or kind of stacks with this a little bit more. Because at the moment, as it stands, like, this ranking is going to come across as harsh, I think, but it's harsh because in isolation the rule is great, but any rule which can be just ignored, if you know you're going to play against Space Wolves, well, when you're just not going to do the thing. You're not going to do the infiltrate thing, and you're just going to do something different. And then, great. I mean, you've stopped them from doing that, but
and even if you don't, not every army can. Well, most armies can't infiltrate or outflank every single piece, so you're only going to be losing. And again, you're still able to do it, just a little bit further away.
So based on this, I am unsure, but it has to be one of these two.
It's D, right?
I
think
is
I understand
D,
the
because
argument.
The rule on itself, is that rule better than
that? Isn't an army rule.
Jink?
That isn't an army rule. That's a special unit rule.
It's a special unit rule, or it
needs to be on
rule, isn't it?
A squad of seekers or something, right? Or a specific anti-recon detachment as a army rule. Although in a vacuum, it is very good. As an army rule as a whole, it's not good.
Yeah, you're gaining no benefit for having multiple detachments of this, and yeah, they are take the minimum points, 130 points of them.
Then again, I would still say, getting +1 to Jink saves if White Scars are in the C, maybe it is a C.
But that's everything getting an invulnerable save effectively.
True. Well, yeah, true. Actually, that does have a use in every game if you build towards your Legion. Yeah. Whereas this,
I was going to put it in C. I'm going to piss off all the dog boys out there, and I'm going to put it in D.
I mean, I would be fucking mad if I was a Space Wolf person. And then I turned to this page the first time I got this rulebook, and I was like, great, like, this doesn't feel Space Wolfy at all. Whereas my Loyalist equivalent of the World Eaters, you know?
Yes, exactly. Especially when you look at the World Eaters. I mean, they are supposed to be savage in combat, but you would expect something from these guys who pride themselves in that kind of warfare. I stress, right? I'm putting it in D. If they had something else, just one other rule, it would probably be B.
Yeah.
If they had something which affected all of their units, like a lot of the other ones do, maybe to a lesser extent.
That doesn't rely on the opponent's list.
Yeah, I mean, it could be just, if you roll a 1 in combat, re-roll the dice. Yeah, that's a rule that doesn't exist, but something like that would easily, depending on the rule, put it up immediately.
Even just a movement or Furious Charge. Giving them the Furious Charge special rule, that's +1 CAF. Was it +1 CAF additional on the charge?
Good question. I've never come across anything with it.
I have. I was at the...
Is that the Ogre
Battle Report I went to, yeah.
Oh yeah, we forgot to mention that. Johnny was on a Battle Report.
I have a feeling you potentially forgot to mention our lovely patrons as well. Just that we had new patrons.
No, we definitely did that.
Okay.
Definitely did that. Hello again, Warwick, Richard and Davey.
Oh yes, yeah, of course. Okay, that's fine. It's Monday.
It is Monday. Where's Furious Charge? Well, I mean, we're totally spitballing at this point, aren't we? Because it doesn't exist at the moment.
Yeah, I'm almost certain Furious Charge is an additional CAF to the charge.
Special, which adds 2 to the fight roll instead of 1. Yeah.
Oh, 2. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So it's an additional CAF.
Yeah.
But yeah, something like that would work. So sorry, Space Wolf players. It's going to be a D. Just spend your 130 points, get the ability, the minimum outlay, and
play another Legion.
Yeah, but let's hope Formations of Legend fix it. So Lore, Johnny.
Okay.
The Wolf Lord.
Leman Russ, the Wolf Lord, is their Primarch. They come from Fenris, which is a death world, icy death world, full of giant wolves and other deep krakens. But there's no wolves on Fenris, but there are wolves on Fenris. But there are so many wolves on Fenris. And like krakens below the ice. And, this is kind of reminiscent of Caliban being just like a dangerous place to live, but this one more so.
To be more derivative, we've had the Knights of the Round Table. We've had the Mongol Empire. We've now got Vikings.
They're cool. Don't get me wrong. they just, you read one book and you're kind of done with the whole, we don't have psychers, we have priests that definitely aren't psychers, and we're really contradictory of everything we do, and have this weird superiority complex because the Emperor picked us to kill other legions, and that's an honor somehow.
And of course, Russ in particular was instrumental in the Council of Nicaea, which basically pissed off Magnus and all the other psychers.
Dude got played like a fiddle.
Yeah.
Completely
and it's lame
removed
as hell. Like any potential protection that the Imperium would have against demons, and left everybody massively unprepared for, what would come from the warp sort of at later date, and then got manipulated again after the folly of Magnus.
Mm-hmm. And like needlessly both almost wiped out his own forces and that of Magnus, but also solidified the fact that Magnus was to become a traitor, because even after he was defeated at Prospero, Magnus still wasn't invested. He was floating around in ghost form chatting to Lorgar and stuff like that. He still was on the fence. Like if Lehman had just left him the fuck alone, he'd probably have a heavily psychic capable force there to aid the Emperor, which would have been, complete.
Well, it was a loss of those shards, wasn't it? Because his soul was Magnus's soul was split into shards, and it was that kind of empathy sort of shard which ultimately was lost and turned him kind of into what he was. But it's I can't. How many books? I can't even recall any individual books other than Prospero which really kind of focus in on developing the space. They're almost like the boogeyman. They're a bit two-dimensional, sending the space wolves. I mean, there's some really cool characters that do belong to the space wolves beyond the fell-handed. What's the name of that? Isn't there one which is part of the kill team, which goes after the vengeful spirit with Loken?
Oh yeah.
But there's certainly one on the walls of Terra, because there's pockets of them as well at the walls of Terra who managed to get to Earth before everything was closed off. But
just even back to the Nicaea thing, like them both, hating psychers, but then also having a load of them in their ranks. But
yes, they're not psychers though. These are the psychers we got from Timu.
Yeah, literally. These are priests which, call upon the winds of our homeworld and definitely not the warp, even though they are functionally psychers in every single way, and I'm pretty sure have their own versions of psychic hoods. It's just so frustrating. Like, their lore is frustrating. They're just I know that the whole point is them to be stubborn and thick-skulled, but these are, Lehman's still a fucking Primarch. He still has
the most loyalist legion, though.
I mean, yeah, in the way that a whipped dog is loyal, right?
Yeah. I think
yeah.
kind of him like Lehman Russ and Angron, you kind of wonder, like, would they have worked well together if Angron hadn't received the nails? Like, very kind of similar sort of temperaments. Maybe if that hadn't happened to Angron, we would have seen something similar with the World Eaters.
In Betrayal, they talk about the Night of the Wolf and the Space Wolves coming to steady the hand of the World Eaters and basically creating a mini war. And it goes to show you there that they are the kind of obedient dogs, whereas the World Eaters were the true wolves. In the least edgy way possible.
It's heavily hinted, though, isn't it, as well, that they've already let the dogs of war loose on the legions at least once with one of the Lost Legions, which they don't talk about. They don't talk about the Lost Legions, but it's heavily implied that they were called upon as the Emperor's executioners at least once before.
Yeah, it's hinted at massively that they have executed Primarchs way before the events of the Horus Heresy.
I'm guessing you're not much of a fan.
I'm not a fan. I like the vibe and like the aesthetic, and big wolves are cool, but they're definitely C tier. And I know that's going to upset a lot of people. One of my very good friends is a massive Space Wolves fan. And I'm sorry, Matt, but it's they're C tier. I'm
struggling to kind of argue against it, to be honest. I don't think they get a lot of love in the 30k lore to really kind of shine above that. But yeah, I feel like that's probably fair, and again based purely on the Horus Heresy novels and what happens during that. Some interesting set pieces, but they're very often seen in the third person. Like we rarely get much in the way of first person kind of quality time with the Space Wolves. It's often seen in that kind of third person onlooker perspective. But I mean, I would these guys, I would love to do a Legion's force of Space Wolves, but I absolutely won't until they get something better, because the 30k armor scheme I feel is so much better than the 40k kind of sky bluey grey color. I really like the sort of browny dirty grey that they have in the Heresy era. But yeah, not for me in the current stage.
No, not super exciting. Very do the same thing again every book.
Right, okay then. Sorry, Space Wolves.
Sorry, Space Wolf fans.
So
at least
let's get on to my boys, and I'll try not to be biased. But the 7th Legion Imperial Fists, they have Disciplined Fire. If an enemy, start over again. If an Imperial Fist's infantry detachment is issued with the first fire order, any weapons model within the detachment that have the listed below gain the accurate trait until the end of that round. So that's any Imperial Fist infantry detachment with Legion Bolters, Legion Combi Bolters, Legion Bolt Pistols, missile launchers, plasma cannons, las cannons, auto cannons, and heavy bolters. Obviously, there's quite a few infantry units in that which we haven't seen yet. So, like, we don't have infantry units with plasma cannons, las cannons, auto cannons, or heavy bolters. So, hopefully, that's a hint of kind of what's going to come. But accurate effectively allows you to reroll misses, and that means that if I'm on a first fire order, I'm going to get that. And I will get that with my tactical marines. I will get that with my missile launchers. I will get that with my command HQs, my HQ Legion commands. I will get it with my assault marines. I will get it with Terminators. So there's a lot of units which you can get that, and it's quite a static defensive use,
as it should be,
and as Imperial Fist should be, but it's very useful. And like missile launchers with first fire in a building or in some cover are just
chronic.
They're devastating.
They're horrible
because you're re-rolling your misses to hit, and not only that, like if you've got first fire order and you are charged or you want to do Overwatch, well, you've still got you are discarding that first fire order, so you're still getting the accurate trait on your Overwatch. So as it's you're fishing for sixes, but you've got twice as many opportunities to get that, so you're doubling your potential Overwatch hits, which again makes a lot of sense in the rules. But I feel like this is a rule which is good now based on the models that we've got. It's potentially only going to get better when we get new units like the plasma cannons, las cannons, auto cannons, etc. I'm a big fan of this rule. I think it's definitely something which you can build around. If I had it my way and I had the models for it, I'd probably have a second unit of missile launchers because they're just great. But generally speaking, they're the only unit which I put on Overwatch most of the time. But I know that I can do it if I'm holding an objective or something and I don't want to be shot off it or charged. I'll put my tactical marines in on first fire. There's lots of applications where you can do it. You teleport down your terminators into an area that they want to take. You don't want to charge with them next turn. You can put them on Overwatch and just have them shooting stuff off the objectives or what have you. I think it's a very simple rule, and that means it's easy to remember, which means it gets used a lot, and it's used throughout the game. I think it's pretty good. I think it's one of the better Loyalist Legions abilities, and for that reason, I think it's A tier.
I think I agree with that. Is it not as good as Dark Angels? I guess you got the versatility of the Dark Angels, right? Yeah, I'm happy with here.
And it's only infantry, of course. Remember,
yeah,
it's impacted. So
I mean that it'd be way too strong if that. I mean, compare that to the Space Wolves.
Well, rerolls are rare, right?
Right.
And when you're hitting on a 5+ and getting rerolls on 5+s or 4+s, like you're firing eight missile launchers and you're firing at another building with your frag grenades, which ignore cover. You're picking up 16 dice and you're looking for 4s, which means you're going to hit with about 12. So that will generally, unless somebody gets like really, really lucky with their armor saves, it's probably going to wipe out the best part of a unit in one round of shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've been on the end of those missile launchers, and they are the worst. Any chance to take them out.
This was something when we played our test games of your spider bots before you went on Tabletop Standard to record the video, which is going to be on YouTube soon if it's not already by the time this comes out. I kept having to remind you, but remember that his shooting won't do this.
Yeah, I think I was pretty concerned after a couple of our practice games with them because obviously the Harpacks were turn one charging anything in range from their infiltrate positions, and
got mauled.
I realised that to eat the missile launchers, I'd had to throw 2 squads at them so the first one could eat up the Overwatch fire.
Yeah. And even that, even 2 squads of them didn't fully survive, did they?
No, not like whittle the numbers down, but not completely wipe them. Not a very good trade points wise, but
no. So Imperial Fists, the Lore.
The Lore, they are they're cool. So their Primarch is Rogal Dawn. They are mostly a Terran-born legion. They are kind of the defenders of Terra. They are the embodiment of defensive, fortified warfare. Playing on the defensive. They are excellent at building and defending castles, for lack of a better term. Castles, yeah. Fortresses.
Fortifications.
Castling.
Fighting against the Dark Angels.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Come into my castle. I need it fortified.
These guys, they're cool. I think they kind of suffer a little bit from every Imperial Fist is very dour, very emotionless.
Well, I mean, he's kind of grumpy Uncle Rogal, isn't he? Really, like he's very kind of very focused on what he needs to do. He's very calculating,
very stoic,
very determined and resolute. And I think that is kind of what embodies his legion is this kind of they are
cold pragmatism,
but they're as much a part of the wall as the wall is, like unyielding, and like the opposite number of to the Iron Hands, which is why there's so much kind of animosity between Perturabo and Rogel Dawn, because Perturabo is the master siege smith. Rogel Dawn is the master builder, the master defender.
Fortress builder.
And so the two, Perturabo has always had a bit of a chip on his shoulder about Rogel, and he really sees like it as a testing of ability and wills when he gets to attack the Siege of Terra, because he's putting all of his siegecraft knowledge against all of the expertise in defense that Rogel Dawn has. And yeah, it's you don't get much out of Rogel. Some interesting characters though. Again, people like Fafnir Ran of the Assault Cadre, great character in the Horus Heresy.
Sigmason obviously being absolute monster throughout the entire of the Heresy books.
With his black, with his black blade given to him by the Emperor, I think, wasn't it? Or given to him by Rogel, it was given to him by the Emperor.
By the Emperor, yeah.
And he, again, spoiler alert, if you're going to watch this, and Sigismund is the one that kills Khan.
Yeah.
So
and
that shows you how much of a monster he is.
Has a wait, Khan?
Yeah.
When is he called Khan?
In like one of the later books, I swear it's him that kills Khan.
Oh, Khan. Sorry, I thought
Khan the Betrayer.
Not Jagatai. I was like, wait a minute.
No.
I was like, what? Khan? No. Yes.
Khan.
Yeah.
Khan. Not Khan.
Not Khan. Yes. Okay. I was like, wait a minute. Where's this going? Yeah. He also kills. Was it this Ralderon who kills the Night Lords?
It's Ralderon.
Okay. All right. We'll get to that in a bit, because that's my favorite scene in the entire Heresy. He's got a good Talia Sigismund, and then again the scene in where he's leading, because obviously from the Imperial Fists, the Black Templars begin to form in the Horus Heresy. The
they're the first kind of religious, because he falls in with Keeler, doesn't he? Euphrates
Keeler, yeah. Like the first patron saint of worshipping the Emperor, essentially, and draws his the least likely legion to spawn kind of a religious subfaction would be the Imperial Fists, just because of their
and he suffers for it though, doesn't
nature.
He? Like in certainly like he has a big Sigismund has a big falling out with Rogel Dawn.
Practically disowns him as a son.
He goes from his favoured son to basically being an outcast, and then towards the end is brought back into the fold again and said, right, go forth and do what you need to do.
Just the scene in the Siege of Terra where he's leading like the column of faithful baseline human refugees, and just like charging the ranks of is it Death Guard, that he just charges and headhunts he always goes for the captains and the leaders, and duels them, and always wins because he's a monster.
Well, is it him who's got the blade and he basically learns something from
yes it like some weird trick, like warp trickery shit is infused in his blade, and if he kills anyone, he gets like either their full memories or like partial memories.
He's able to absorb part of their essence or something, isn't he, which makes him better.
Which is also kind of driving him mad as well, but it makes him he learns a little bit about them, and like maybe a bit of skill they had sword fighting, and it just makes him even more powerful. And obviously if he's headhunting all these characters and these captains, he's kind of exponentially growing into an absolute monster.
And Dawn, of course, is also one of the only Primarchs in 30k other than Khan to fight a Demon Prince.
And obviously Sanguinius as well.
Yeah, obviously. So actually, they all get a go, don't they? But yeah, he basically Rogel Dawn is responsible for making the Emperor's children fuck off and decides, solve this for a game of soldiers. We're off. I'll see you later. And he brings low Fulgrim, or really kind of like dashes Fulgrim's pride, which obviously is everything that he cares about.
He also kills Alfarius, right?
Yes, on the because they attack Pluto, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
does he though?
Yeah,
He kills
does he though?
Alfarius?
Or is it a Megon? Or is it just a fucking legionary? Who knows? So they have like quite a few cool defining moments in the books. I just don't think they are all that. They don't have that much depth. Are you gonna hate me if I say C?
Yes.
You think that? Okay.
You think they're as good as the Space Wolves?
Okay, maybe not. No, okay, that's fair enough. Okay, B.
Okay, sitting nicely on the fence here with the lore in the middle here.
I
Is
mean,
this because you're biased because you don't like loyalists?
If anything, you're getting a more real response.
Less
I don't know,
biased.
less
You
bias.
hate them all
This is why
equally.
I need you to temper me because it's hard to beat cool shit like demons.
I'm seeing who we've got left, and I'm wondering who could possibly go higher than a B.
Shit, maybe. I mean, spoiler alert. Maybe Blood Angels.
Spoiler
Maybe
alert,
we need to
we're going to
shift.
fall out if Blood Angels aren't higher than a B.
Oh, yeah, no, they're going to be higher than the B. Yeah, for sure. Maybe we shift all of the lore up one because there are some stinkers left.
Yeah, but really, like all of those A tier?
No, I don't think Imperial Fists are A tier though. Do you think they're A tier? Genuinely,
I think
they are featured a lot, and they are featured in some of the best books in the series because they're the main ones defending Terra. But are those books good because of them and their lore, or are they good because it's the Siege of Terra? Think before the Siege of Terra, how many really kind of
all right.
good?
Okay.
Yeah? No?
I'll capitulate on B for now, but we'll see where everything else lands by the time that we've finished. Okay, so we're going to jump onto Blood Angels now, which is going to be the last one before we take a short break, because I need a wee.
Very good.
So the Blood Angels, Ninth Legion, my first love. I started collecting Blood Angels in 2nd edition 40k back in 95. Shows how old I am. So they have Encarmine Fury. All models with a Blood Angels detachment that win a combat may move up to 3 inches after all withdrawal moves have been completed, as long as the detachment is not engaged. Models can move into base contact with enemy models during this move. They may not embark or garrison a structure as part of this move. If a detachment engages an enemy detachment in this way that is in a combat but has yet to fight, the Blood Angels detachment may fight again this round, otherwise do not resolve the combat. A detachment can only move via the Encarmine Fury rule once per round and cannot move if it is still engaged after the combat has won. So what that means is you've either got to wipe out your opponent or you've had to have lost as much as killed to end with you not touching other models. So
or you've made them flee.
Yeah, you've either won and they've buggered off, you've wiped them out, or there's been enough kills on both sides that nobody is left in base-to-base contact because they've killed one another. And it allows that 3-inch consolidation move. Now, theoretically, I think that there is potential with that to be fairly good in the right situation, especially if you can kind of get them into combat, fight the combat, win that combat, and then consolidate into a fresh opponent and fight another combat again. I that's pretty good. Or if you don't want the your opponent to leg it, like if you have beaten them but you're unengaged, and you want to tie them down, you can then consolidate back into engagement. You don't get the extra round of combat, but you can pin them in place and stop them from moving away again next turn. Or you can wrap around them if you were fighting tanks or something like that, you don't want tanks to go anywhere. You can use your 3 inches to maybe see if you can get, surround them to stop them from moving. But it's very circumstantial, and I think that you have to really rely on high CAF units to get the most out of this, or ones which are most likely to have that kind of shock and awe approach to it. And I think that you get that through Leviathan Dreadnoughts, I think. They've got a pretty mighty CAF. I'm not maybe Assault Marines, but you're going to get the most bang for the buck out of the Leviathans. So I think this could be very good in like an airborne spearhead, aerial assault spearheads, where you're dropping people in, assaulting, and then trying to do as much damage. But the problem that I have with this is that combat is swingy as fuck. CAF is pretty random on its own without some way of boosting it. So you have to rely on your high CAF models, which are going to be getting the bonuses to charge as well, to really make it so that you're going to get the most out of this. And if you end up going straight in against a bunch of World Eaters, well, sorry, but they do combat better than you do. And so, they're kind of like the rock, the immovable object that you're going to hit with these guys. It's another one I feel like they could have done with getting Furious Charge. Like, they seem to have Furious Charge in every game of 40k that I've played in the past. I'm going to sneeze. It's going to come, but not right now. But yeah, like 3 inches isn't a lot, and although it allows you to, you could hit and then maybe duck behind a cover, back into cover or something, or if you're in cover and the opponent's not too far away, you could assault out and then possibly retreat back into cover. You obviously can't do that into a building. You can't garrison, or you can't get on board a vehicle, but you could, jump out of an obstacle and then jump back into it after the combat, as long as you're not engaged. It's very circumstantial. I think that
I feel like the stars have to align for this one, right?
Yeah, I think that you can definitely set it up to try and get the most out of this with certain build around options, but it's just there's not enough kind of there which is really adding a huge amount of value other than a little bit of tactical. Something you really like, you'll have to remember to use it. It's okay. I think it's an okay rule. Combat happens to everybody. And do you have to have charged? Did I say that? No, it just says that win a combat. So even if you are attacked yourself and you win, you get that free 3-inch movement. That could be the difference between being on an objective and not being an objective, or getting more people into objective range than you had before. So it has uses. It could be fairly good. But again, I think the thing which would make this higher than I'm going to put it would be if you just had something else, like Furious Charge or something. And because of that, they're going to be my first B. Look at that. I've got 1 in every thing over the first 5 legions. Look at me. It's almost as if I planned that. I didn't plan that at all because I've changed 2 of them. But yeah, I think that they are B okay. And they look cool because they're Blood Angels. So, I definitely build an army around these guys.
I think I think it's a cool rule. That's a fun rule. But it's hard to. I like the idea
of getting a second round of combat, but again, to me, it just feels like really you're going to take your slightly defeated unit and then probably lose more. I mean, you might do a bit of damage and stuff, but it's not as reliable, is it?
You're consolidating into. Would you still have your charge order? Would you still get charge bonuses? Yeah, we still
under charge. You still get the bonus. So if there is an unengaged guy 3 inches away from you, you could ping pong into them.
If you're assaulting like a line, like a line of infantry units, but again, units take up quite a lot of space. I can't imagine being able to hop to another unit in totality.
You have to be in combat. You have to win the combat.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be unengaged at the end of that combat. And there has to be another target within 3 inches of you to then be able to fight another combat.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stars
well.
that have to align. But, it would certainly put me off bunching units up together if I knew I was fighting against Blood Angels. And I think, like I say, Airborne Assault seems pretty good. Maybe even something like Subterranean Assault as well would be quite good coming out the tops. And then they don't have assault ramps there, do they? So they can't assault that round. But
you know what else is potentially good for as well is assaulting objectives, wiping a unit that is completely covering and encircling an objective, and then being able to move more bodies in range of that objective. I think would be a pretty nice move for them.
Yeah, and it's everything, of course, because it is all models. So it includes your tanks as well, or your walkers, or your jet bikes. Jet bikes might be another good one. Anyway, lore. Sanguinius.
Sanguinius, the Primarch. The Blood Angels are from the planet of Baal, or Baal. They used to be the Corpse Eaters or something like that before
the Revenants.
Revenant Legion, that's it. Before Sanguinius was found and rejoined them, and this is pertinent because they are, for all intents and purposes, noble vampires. In kind of all senses, quite literally, eat the dead. They would eat the dead before Sanguinius came, and they suffer from a defect in their gene seed called the Red Thirst.
Not at this point, I don't think.
Not at this point. They get They get the Black Rage after Sanguinius' death, but do they not have?
You know what? I don't know, because the whole eating the corpse thing was a tradition of the Revenants, but it was because Space Marines have the ability that if you eat a part of your enemy, you can gain some of their memories.
So they'd have this eternal leader, wouldn't they? That would, with every successor, they would eat that corpse and then take on the. But
there was almost like a bit of an honor thing with, eating the death of a worthy adversary or something to kind of learn about them or whatever. But yeah, they went from being, borderline crazy world eater type Legio to being civilized by Sanguinius when he arrived.
I'm pretty sure they do have the Red First in the Heresy, because I'm pretty sure, Lorgar, I'm listening to Betrayer at the moment, Lorgar mentions it.
You could be right. I mean, everyone's got a flaw, right?
I know it's maybe not as obvious as 40k, but I'm pretty sure it's there. I know obviously it's fully awakened on Terra when they get hit by that psychic wave.
That's true.
And they start turning on everyone. But up until that point,
I thought that was more part of the kind of almost like the Black Rage manifesting.
No, because it's two separate things, isn't it?
It is two separate things.
It is Rage,
the Black Rage is a result of Horus. And the Red Thirst, is more like that primal urge. I could be mistaken. I thought that was more of a 40k thing, but you might be right.
They're very cool. They are artsy and classical Renaissance vibes without being the Emperor's Children and taking it too far. They have they're very graceful. They have just very classical vibes to them, but they're not hedonists. They just appreciate art and war in equal measure, for the most part anyway. They have some fairly fucking badass characters. Ralderon is awesome, as I was mentioning earlier. He's in one of the coolest scenes, I think, in the Horus Heresy, or at least most satisfying scenes. And I love the Night Lords. But he styles on the Painted Count, I think his name is.
It's the Painted Count, and he's like, "Don't you know who I am?"
Yeah, Gendor Skyvok. Yeah, and he's like, "I am the Flayer of Men." The blah blah blah, lists off 100 names, and Raldoron's like, "Never heard of you," and then just beats the shit out of him and throws him off the wall.
Get fucked. Off the side of the wall.
This dude's like the Night Lord's representative of the Siege of Terra as well, and he just like very quickly absolutely fucking wrecks him.
Well, it's because he's got that demon sword, hasn't he, Scrivark, and his demon sword's like, well, no thanks. See you later.
Demon sword's like, you know, it would be really funny right now. I stopped giving you powers, and he's like, what? And he gets yeeted off the wall.
He gets absolutely bundled off the wall. Yeah. And there's is it Amit? What's his?
Amit. I only know it by Amit.
The basically the first Flesh Terror. He was called the Flesh Terror. I forget his name. Somebody Amit, isn't it? Amit's his surname, I think. But yeah, great. I loved the story between him, and he had a World Eater's like blood brother, who was this apothecary in the World Eaters, and they used to fight in the cages of basically it was this. Yeah, that it was like tolerated and allowed, like almost like death games, where they would basically take, they would fight nearly to the death, and they'd be chained to, I think they're called like Chain Brothers or something. In fight, and there's this great scene between Amit and I forget the name of the apothecary now from the. He's
the blood spitter, right?
Yeah, he's a really good World Eater character.
Yeah,
and I the thing which is kind of repeated throughout about the Blood Angels is that they are just peerless. Like they excel at everything that they do, but like you say, there's no, and it's the same with Sanguinius. It's not done with any bravado. It's not done with any arrogance, like maybe the Emperor's children. And Sanguinius himself is a fucking angel.
Yeah,
like you know he's looked upon with almost godlike reverence by the people of the Imperium, but Horus very much sort of at the early days is like, why was I made the War Master? It should have been Sanguinius, like a peerless fighter, respected by everybody, and there's a reason why they decide. I say they, Lionel Johnson and Gilliman decide that he should be the Emperor of Imperium Secundus, because he is just loved, respected. He's a peerless general. Like, he takes on an Imperator Titan and decapitates an Imperator Titan.
Yeah.
Like, just because he can.
Starts bear wrestling, fully demon form, Angron at the gates of Terra.
Well, he takes on what's the name of the greater demon? Which
Kabanda.
Kabanda. He nails Kabanda and then gets a little bit injured by Kabanda, and then Angron turns up and he goes, "Right, come on then, we'll just bring it again. I've just killed this greater demon. Now it's your turn." And then goes and
fucking wrecks him.
Wrecks Angron.
I mean, he does almost die as well again. But
kills Kabanda.
Kills.
Spoilers. Kills Angron. Then goes up onto the Vengeful Spirit, goes toe to toe with Horus until he can't go any further. Like, he very nearly at one point, you feel like he's gonna win, and then Horus just dials it up to 11. And
Horus at this point is not an equal Primarch, but a monstrous infusion of all of the Chaos God's powers into what is essentially a second Emperor power level. And he does all of this, a lot of the later novels follow his kind of acceptance that, because he can see he's got some partial precognition powers, which is kind of the source of the Black Rage for the Blood Angels themselves being psychically linked to him quite strongly. And he knows that he sees his death. He knows that he dies, and he comes to realize he will die at the hands of Horus. So he begins actually acting quite carelessly. And you could argue that, maybe a lot of his careless acts probably...
He has plot armor for most of the heresy.
But probably do, account for why he dies at the end, and actually,
Well, you're given just about enough, aren't you, to kind of think, this isn't going to happen. Like, he sees paths where it doesn't end that way. And so you are kind of, I mean, you obviously know that it does because 40k came first chronologically.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Everyone
know that he
knows.
dies.
Yeah.
And it's like, I liken it to watching Titanic. Like, you know that
You know
ship's
it's going to sink. Yeah.
You
But
don't
you
want
enjoy
it
it for the
to.
journey.
Yeah, and you know he's going to die. And I was like, one of the things, being a bit of a Blood Angels fanboy that I am, which I was worried about, is how they would write that scene. And Dan Abnett just got it spot on. And if you ever want to listen to a version of that scene where Horus is killing Sanguinius, there is a voiceover artist called Christopher Tester, and he does these incredible dramatic voiceovers. He does like shorts and things on Facebook and Instagram, and he he specializes in the speeches from books, and he reads the from the point of view of Horus, the killing of Sanguinius, and it is just gripping, so well done. And on the death of Sanguinius, like he lets out like this psychic scream, which basically turns his entire legion on Terra absolutely crazy, and they start falling upon anybody and everybody. Like, there's a scene where I think it's either Fafnir Ran, I think it is, turns and he sees I forget them. It's Achelion or somebody, like one of the sanguinary guards, who is this sort of peerless, beautiful,
noble knight,
noble warrior.
Yeah,
just savaging and literally ripping into opponents. It's just
like drop weapons, claws out, fangs bared, just tearing at throat.
Just not no conscious like thought of their own self. They just start acting instinctively, and then that psychic resonance goes on into the 40k universe, where they're still haunted by this death, and eventually it, turns on the black rage. Yeah. So, Johnny, are we going to fall out?
No, we're not. I think they're S tier. I don't think there is a more enjoyable loyalist legion. Keep saying legio, legion to read than the Blood Angels.
I don't there's not many Blood Angels individuals who get a lot of time, other than maybe like Is it Zephyr?
Zephyr, the one that gets injured, right?
Yeah. Raldaron, Amit. I say that there's three.
And then Sanguinius, you get a lot of POV from Sanguinius, and Sanguinius is such a cool character.
Yeah, and similarly to Horus, like, and I think we put Horus quite the Sons of Horus quite high, didn't we, in the last one? But like, you see their relationship from the start. They are like brothers. The closest, most respected of brothers. And Horus is desperate to get Sanguinius to join him
on side, yeah.
And when he's rejected by Sanguinius, it's like devastating to Horus.
Yeah.
And he realizes that the only way that he's going to beat, this is going to end, is going to be bloody. But yeah, if you hadn't have put them in S tier, I think I would have.
I mean, who else? Who else, right? Who else would be in S tier compared to them? I think the Sanguinius is, even like his whole angel demeanor is an interesting kind of plot development point, because the entire time, yes, he looks like this beautiful angelic Roman marble statue, but he also realizes that these wings aren't metaphysical, they are real, and the implications of him having a mutation like that scare him. And with good reason, he almost gets turned to the powers of the dark gods on Cygnus, to Khorne specifically.
Not even talked about
right?
Cygnus Prime, have we?
No. He gets lured to a demon planet and basically almost. And man, yeah, God, even talking about Cygnus as well, just opening up that entire the Red Angel and clear contender for S tier for sure.
I think that's a good point to take a break. We're going to do some sponsor updates, and then we're going to finish off with the last four. Okay, it's time for some quick news from our sponsors. Obviously, again, can't do this show without a little bit of support from our sponsors, so we give them a little bit of a shout out every now and again. Make sure you guys know what's going on in the world of epic scale modelling and epic scale gaming. So first up, Evil Johnny Core is back in the house for Battle Bling.
Hobby Heroes, Johnny Core from the Battle Bling store here for you, and it's Tuesday the 1st of April, which means Hobby Has-Been's Evil Johnny Core here, and once again, the 1st of April, I have released a new product past the Battle Bling buffoons. Behold, the Rust Throne. This ancient relic, shrouded in mystery, will be the centerpiece of your games. Whether you play Warhammer 40,000, Kill Team, or Necromunda, the Rust Throne will bring glory to your battles. The downloadable pack also contains rules for all these game systems, as well as STLs and pre-supported lychee scenes. With any purchase of £50 or more, you'll receive a free Rust Throne for the entire month of April. Or if you just want the pack on its own, it's in the new releases section right now. Until next time, I am Evil Johnny Core. I've stolen the Battle Bling store, and you're all awful.
So now you can model your very own rusty throne. don't know what you're going to use it for, but I know that I want it. It's the sculpting on it's amazing. Like,
It's wicked.
You got like little low stick cartons on the inside of the door and stuff that you can purchase while you're having a crap in the underhive or wherever it's going to be. Yeah, so it's obviously he's still got lots of stuff coming out over the next couple of weeks from the little plastic people, but at the moment, the big news is get your hands on your own Rusty Throne. I just hear rusty trombone.
Yeah, same. Every time you say that.
That's something completely different. Anyway,
Google it.
Yeah, don't Google it. Next up, Troublemaker Games. Their City Streets kits are now available to buy directly from Vanguard Miniatures. They come in 3 different sizes, depending on how many that you want. But it works out about £190 if you want a full 4 foot by 6 foot by 4 foot table of the City Streets, which works out quite a bit cheaper than if you were going to do the same with the GW kits. We've been very fortunate enough to get a 5 foot by 4 foot table of this, perfect for Legions Imperialis, sent over to us to have a look at. So there's a lot of sprues of plastic, Johnny. I feel like we should maybe do like a little bit of a painting and modelling day where we get this ready for see if we can get it out for the Corsair Gambit Part 3, which is 24th of May. Tickets out now. Link in the comments if you do want to come to the Corsair Gambit Part 3 narrative event for Legions Imperialis. Anyway, moving on. But no, really, really good, fully modular. They're quite small pieces, but allows for tons of customization. And really designing like a cityscape that you want. There's also available on Vanguard, you can buy the STLs for some canal sections. So I think these are slightly larger sections, which you can print at home and then use alongside the rest of the City Streets kit, just to add that sort of canal variation if you want some impassable terrain on your streets. And the great thing about them as well is they're completely compatible with their plinth offering as well, which they do. So if you don't want a full board of City Streets, you could make a kind of reduced, smaller section of it, which could maybe, like if you've got like a big grassy board or something, you just want part of that to represent a little industrial outcrop or something, you could make it using the city, the plinths and the City Streets. So very, very cool. Like that a lot. Grimdark Terrain's February pack is out. They've got lots of new options this month for new towers on the Mytilene hive walls. So that was kind of, the ones that those are, Johnny. They were like they released the walls originally like years and years ago, and then the upgraded version of these Mytilene walls, much bigger, much more detailed. and this allows you to make big kind of towers. So again, yet another really good pack from Grimdark Terrain. Bronco does really good work on that front, and if you want any of that printed as well, Rock Minis, our other sponsor, they do a printing service. They're one of the approved printers for Grimdark Terrain. And if you actually want to meet Rich, and why wouldn't you? He's a really lovely bloke. He's actually going to be at Salute this year on the 12th of April. He's taking part in the Epic Scale Gaming panel at 11:30. So drop by and say hello if you happen to be at Salute this year. And give him encouragement to keep up doing the good work on the Epic Scale Gaming. So that's it for sponsors news. I think with that to one side, looking at the time, Johnny, we need to crack on.
We need to crack on. Oh, yeah.
We need to crack on. So now, I guess, Iron Hands, shall we?
That's it.
Oh, right. They have Inviolate Armor. So Iron Hands models with the Feel No Pain special rule benefit from its effects when they suffer a wound from a weapon with a light or light AT trait, instead of just the light trait. In addition, any hits scored against an Iron Hands vehicle or super heavy vehicle issued with first fire order worsen their AP by 1 to a minimum of 0, e.g. a weapon with an AP of -2 would become a -1. The first fire order must still be in effect, i.e. it cannot have overwatched or fired yet this round for this rule to take effect. It does not affect the AP if hits are allocated to Void Shields. A couple of interesting things there, really. It mentions Void Shields, but obviously there is nothing which has Void Shields yet. For Space Marines, so maybe in the future. And, I think that there's a couple of hints there as well to possibly more stuff which might come out. Like the only model which I can recall at this point in time which has the Feel No Pain special rule is the HQ, Legion HQ. And
so they provide it to units, right? The bubble?
The unit that it's within, it can take effect of that, but they have to be with the unit. But it's one of those rules I always forget to use, to be honest, because it often gets quite quickly discounted because you're either getting hit by bigger stuff or losing them in combat. That's generally where I lose them. But I mean, it's not a bad rule. It makes them a little bit more, like, for instance, if you got hit by a load of frag missiles, they're going to get that Feel No Pain save, even if they wouldn't normally get a save. And against light AT as well, it just means that weapons like Sikaran, accelerator autocannons and stuff, you're going to get a Feel No Pain. So it's slightly better, but it's I quite like the vehicle rule, making them tougher, but I dislike the fact that you lose it after you've fired. So it only
that doesn't say implacable defensive to me. That says sneaky hidden vehicle.
Yeah, well, yes, and you have to be in a first fire order to get the reduction in the AP against you, and it must be in effect for them to get the -2 AP.
So actually, you're either going to be not firing during first fire, or you're just using. Why wouldn't you? Or you're just banking it against enemy units which first fire, which at least I don't tend to first fire that much.
And really, you're going to have to go at some point. So it's one of those rules which, again, it mentions super heavy vehicles, right? And we don't have any super heavy vehicles for Marines at this particular point in time. Hopefully we will start seeing things like the Falchion come out later, but maybe this might become more relevant when those models do. I feel like it just doesn't need that thing which says it must still be in effect. It would be fine if you were getting shot in the advancing fire stage. When else are you going to get damage caused against you other than in the first fire or advancing fire. Maybe if you're crossing dangerous terrain, but I don't even know if that would count in that situation. And then you're not moving, so you wouldn't be taking dangerous terrain
Yeah.
rolls anyway because you're on first fire, therefore you're not moving.
It's just hard to think of the why. Well, where would this really come in? Unless you're, trying to tank fight someone and they're all first firing and you're wanting to survive the first salvo.
I hope that it comes more relevant as more units come on, as more formations of legend come out, and there is a reason to take Iron Hands because they've got one of their formations of legend out at the moment, which I run all the time, which I always forget the name of, but it allows you to reroll hits against super heavy vehicles and Titans, and it's really good. Knights and Titans.
Really good.
It's really good. So it's worth taking that formation for that rule, and this is almost like an added extra to that formation of legends special rule. I've never had that trigger when using those Iron Hands.
I'd be shocked if you remembered.
Yeah,
it's just so unlikely to happen, really.
I had this down. I'll show you. Let me see what your reaction is when. So I've thought through this a little bit more, I think, while we've been discussing this, than I obviously did in my preparation notes because I had them there.
No. See. But they are teetering to a D. I think the only thing that keeps them in C is that the Feel No Pain is kind of nice.
It's okay. It's one detachment. Is it as bad as Space Wolves? No.
No.
I don't think it is.
As an army-wide ability, no.
No. I mean, that could be 2 or 3 detachments if you set it up, which would get that Feel No Pain save.
But then again, you would never take a sub detachment of, an allied detachment of Iron Hands just to get their Legion ability, ever.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't do it.
But if you, say, for instance, in the Formation of Legend that I run, you've got your sabers, they're bunkered up in some terrain somewhere, you've got them on first fire, hoping to take something out as it comes by. Your opponent might choose to shoot at those in the first fire stage to stop you from doing that. And so you're getting a little bit of a buff in the event that they go before you.
Yeah.
But
I feel like there's enough that if someone is banking on the first fire shenanigans, you just shoot something else.
The thing is that Space Wolves' ability is arguably better.
Just not in a vacuum.
Just not in a vacuum.
So in a vacuum, the Iron Hands ability is better.
Well, because it affects more than it affects multiple units, and there is application for it. It's
you will be, if you remember the rule about the light and light AT, you probably are going to be seeing some.
Well, if it's your main legion, hopefully you'd be very familiar with this, and you would be trying to set up those kind of situations. I just
reducing AP is pretty great. That's pretty nice. It's not you're not improving save, you're just dampening enemy firepower.
Yeah. I wonder, because we're due an FAQ, right? I wonder if we'll see things like, I want to see that last paragraph disappear. I think if that last paragraph saying that it must still be in effect and not been in Overwatch can't have fired, I think it would be okay. I think it would be pretty good. It would be a reason to have snipers in vehicle. Well, have vehicle snipers. You're tougher to hit. But
I feel like it's quite telling that they felt to include that final paragraph, because as per rules, you remove those tokens when you either shoot with first fire or you overwatch with first fire. Therefore, they wouldn't have a first fire order. That's how the rest of the game works. I feel like here they specifically were like, yeah, we know it's bad, but this is the ruling for this, very specifically. That
I don't
technically
think it needs it.
Didn't need to be said. said.
I think that it's fine. I mean, we're only talking like a -2 to a -1 or a -1 to nothing, right? And you know, you generally don't want to keep your tank static. Like one of their main advantages is being mobile. So I think it's fine to give these guys a permanent bonus. If they choose not to move, they're harder to get rid of. They're slightly more tough because of reasons. Doesn't need that thing saying. It just all they need to change is if it has been issued a first fire order, so similar to the to the Imperial Fists. Any unit gains this trait until the end of the round. Is the ruling for Imperial Fists? All this needs to say is if it's issued with a first fire order, these tanks reduce the AP of incoming shots by -1 for the rest of the round. I don't think that would be too bad.
No,
and if that was the case, then these would be solid B, possibly even A, for your armored companies and stuff.
That would be pretty gnarly.
But I don't think it's worse than the Imperial Fist one.
No.
Certainly don't think
Part
it's as
of me
bad as World Eaters.
No, we can't put it in D. A part of me really wants to put it in D with the Space Wolf rule, but I think it is just marginally better.
Is it?
It's your call.
I think the only thing holding it up is those multiple units with Feel No Pain. I think that's the only thing which holds it up there, and that's always going to be useful, unless you get shot with something bigger. But then anti-tank stuff generally will be minus AP dash anyway against infantry. But
there's one detachment with a commander attached,
But the problem with Space Wolves is you might not have anything. It's just.
I mean, I feel like even with Space Wolves, the chances of this coming into effect on that one detachment that you've selected potentially are quite limited, almost as limited as the likelihood of someone bringing.
But then you could say the same about the Blood
outflanked
Angels, can't you? Like it's very circumstantial, but it's something.
Yeah, but
which
it's something
every round.
They get. Yeah, I guess so.
I think by a similar logic to what we gave the Blood Angels to be, it's situational. You have to set it up.
Yeah.
I do think the Blood Angels one is better because there's more application for it, but you will always get at least one, probably multiple units with that Feel No Pain special rule. If you remember to use it, the first fire thing might come into effect if you set it up and you play around it. Again, I think it's something which might become better and might not stand the test of time. I think that with a lot of these units, I want to see a lot of formations of legend for legions like Iron Hands make up for almost like if the Space Wolf's ability was better than this, then the formation of legend would be downright broken, and be made up for with the formations rather than focusing on the Legion special rules, which is certainly what we've seen with the Iron Hands in particular, where that formation on its own has a great set of rules and is unique to Iron Hands, and that makes it worth taking, not the Legion special rules.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So let's leave that as C. I feel like this next bit's going to be a little bit short, don't you?
Yeah, just like the head height of their Primarch.
Yes.
Yes. So Iron Hands. Their Primarch is Ferrus Manus, the Gorgon, some very lazy pig Latin, which is Iron Hands, because he has iron hands. Get it? He actually does. They're like mercurial, silvery, special hands. Anyway,
super.
They come from the super hands. Yeah, they come from the Medusa system. They are pretty boring, in my opinion. They're very prideful. They like their augmentations with machines. They like having craving the certainty of steel and expunging their weak fleshy parts. Very mechanicum aligned in their
Big on the
in their
bionics.
ways of big on the bionics for sure. But they're just a bit. They get dicked over basically immediately at the start of the Horus Heresy with their Primarch Ferrus Manus getting beheaded by Fulgrim, who is his closest brother.
I mean, that's a nice little interplay. Like, it is very much brother on brother again. That's like the similar relationship to Horus and Sanguinius, like Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus, very, very close. Ferrus Manus also an amazing blacksmith and weapon master. He creates weapons. I think he creates some of the weapons for some of the.
Yeah, so I think the big key one is that he created when he first met Fulgrim, his closest brother, Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children. They're both very prideful. The Iron Hands are very prideful as well. And they were boasting about how they were, excellent metallurgists and blacksmiths and weapon forgers. And they both toiled for 20 days and nights to forge, these perfect weapons in this contest of just endurance and artisanal skill. And Fulgrim creates Ferrus's hammer. Creates a hammer, and Ferrus creates Fireblade, which is like a sword. And both are so enraptured and awed by the other's creation, and they basically present them to each other as gifts. So the great hammer that you see, his most notable model being the 30k, him swinging this great meteoric hammer. Yeah. Really, really dynamic pose. That's created by Fulgrim, and Fulgrim has the Fireblade, which is before he picks up the Demon Blade, his main weapon.
I think
so really cool lore. Very the Iron Hands are very Greekan vibes, but they're just so unexciting during the Heresy. They get interesting when they basically they dissolve as a legion and become a Shattered Legion.
Well, that's it, isn't it? They don't really have time to do much, because by the third book of, third or fourth book of the Horus Heresy, they are a Shattered Legion. Most of them have been killed. They're the first legion to lose a Primarch, and they then dissolve into hit and run tactics to try and keep taking the fights to the traitors after the drop site massacre, when the who is it? It's the Alpha Legion, the Night Lords, attack them from behind.
Their reinforcements.
Yeah. But yeah, they don't really have time to do very much. There's the odd Iron Hands turns up every now and again and has a little bit of a set piece, but there's not really enough kind of going on there that they get much opportunity to shine in the limelight. It's the shocking moment is not only that they lose that Fulgrim kills his brother, but that a Primarch can die. That he's almost he sets the tone for the rest of it, and it immediately puts the loyalists on the
back foot,
and at a disadvantage over the rest of them. But yeah, otherwise, not a lot in the Heresy going on. I'm sorry, Iron Hands fans. Where are we going to put these guys? Not much to talk about, really. So.
There isn't much to talk about. I'm feeling, it's hard to. I maybe D, but I also kind of like the whole Christmas Carol, Ghost of Christmas Past appearance in the Siege of Terra when Ferrus, or potentially Ferrus, is talking to Sanguinius. That's kind of cool, but there is just, unless we include the Shattered Legion as a whole, but that's completely different again.
I don't think there's enough there to warrant anything other than that.
Mm.
Sorry, but
Yeah.
I agree. I think they just don't. We're going to talk about 2 more Shattered Legions in a minute, and both of those have
So much
infinitely
cooler.
more going on for them than
Yeah.
the others, and that's a shame, really, I think. But, such is life, I guess. There's got to be somebody in D. I like we're doing pretty well at the moment.
Doing all right, yeah.
We're balanced-ish. Shall we talk about the next Legio, 13th Legio Smurfs? Ultramarines, sorry. Sorry. So the Ultramarines have interlocking tactics. So an Ultramarine model may re-roll any hit rolls of 1 when firing upon an enemy detachment that has already had 1 or more hits scored against it this round by an Ultramarines model from the same formation as the firing model. So re-rolls are pretty rare. It's a little bit similar to the Horus Heresy, the Sons of Horus ability, which allows them to re-roll 1s when they're close and on advancing orders. I think it is, isn't it, for Sons of Horus? But you do have to, like, the first unit that shoots or something is going to be at a disadvantage, and because they're not going to get any re-rolls, it's only going to be everything after that that gets a reroll. And we're only talking about rerolls of 1, so it's not like the accurate rule, for instance, that the Imperial Fists get, but it will be on everything.
Specifically model, not infantry or vehicle.
Yeah, and does it encourage big formations?
Oh yeah.
So you've got more kind of that can get the benefit of that rather than splitting things up, because I don't know. I think maybe this would be quite useful at like taking down Titans, where you're going to have to put multiple things into them, and it's just letting you kind of get slightly more hits than you normally would do against it. But again, you're only really talking about potentially an additional 1 hit per 6 dice that you're rolling. And even then, you might roll a 1 or a 2. There's only actually a 66% chance that you will hit after re-rolling that 1 in 6.
Do you want to know my lukewarm take? I think it forces you to play the game better.
Okay, explain.
Because it forces you to focus on individual units that the enemy controls, as opposed to spreading your fire out like evenly across the enemy force. Like, this is a very much, you have tracer rounds with your shit weapons, and then everything else that's got a punch. If you fire with tactical marines at something, and then the missile launcher in the same demi company in the building at the back then gets to shoot. Rerolling 1s is huge for the amount of dice that you're throwing down in large units. So large units, large companies, formations, I think are But having that kind of focus on, we are strategically taking down this target, so everyone fuck that guy and re-roll 1s while you do it, and then until you're on to the next one.
What I think is that this might be useful against. Actually, like, I need to check a rule, because this might change my opinion on this. Can you shoot a weapon with the light trait against a target which can't be hurt by the light trait?
Yes, they just get discarded. The rolls just get discarded. You're talking about shooting void shields, right?
Well, I'm not even talking about. Well, that is possibly one thing. Let me just have a look at the light trait. So where are we? Light hits scored by a weapon with a light trait against a vehicle, super heavy vehicle, knight or titan are automatically discarded before any save rolls are made. Okay, so here's what I think. You take a bunch of rhinos and you give them bolters with point defense weapons, and you run them up the board using their point defense in the movement phase, probably using like a march order or something like that. And you waste those shots against a unit that you really want to screw up in the next phase. So you throw it against a super heavy unit like some Kratos or some tanks or somebody else, which means that the stuff that you actually want in your formation to do the damage is getting a bonus to hit at any range, and is like you say, it really you are only talking about 66% of 1 in 6 dice that you're going to be rerolling, but depending on what you're throwing at it, that still could be 1 or 2 extra hits, which could be 1 or 2 extra tanks dead.
I think that's significant. Like compared to the other legions, if we were to put the other legions' special rules into a mathematical or statistical lens, I feel like this actually has pretty solid, returns for what you're doing. And also, this is an entire round ability. So if your opponent goes first and you overwatch something and you hit with one of the shots, any future overwatches, or then your entire next turn in that round, you will be benefiting from that against whatever unit that was triggered against. Or vice versa, if whatever you spray and pray at during your active turn, if you're going first, then in your opponent's turn, if you have any I think it's a little bit, don't know. I think it's a lot stronger than it seems.
Quite possibly. Like I say, it really does want you to focus fire, and I think sometimes when you really need to just fuck that guy, like against a Titan or something like that. I mean, does it say against void shields you just discard it if it's a light trait?
I think it's the same deal, right? As the vehicles. It's just a discard if it doesn't.
So yes, that'll be in the voids shield section, won't it? Where are you? Come on, quickly. When 1 or more hits are scored against a model with active void shields, hits are first allocated. Each time it hits, reduce void shield by 1. Hits can only be allocated to void shields if they were scored by a weapon with a modified AP of -1 or better. So you couldn't use a light weapon to modify to shoot voids because you can't allocate those hits against void shields.
Right. Yes.
So I don't think you could do it in that circumstance.
Would you... Well, yeah. Yeah, maybe, I guess not. But that's kind of like, that's niche, really.
That could be a wrong interpretation. If you think we've got it wrong, please stick something up in chat. That's an interesting kind of edge case, I think. But there's certainly nothing that says that you can't do that against vehicles, like normal vehicles and super heavies. I'll tell you, this is where I had it originally. The question is it as good as the first fire re-rolling every miss on infantry-only units that Imperial Fists get?
Yeah. I don't think it's better.
You've got more. There's more opportunity, isn't there, for stuff to use that ability? I
think it's flat out better than the Blood Angel's ability, and the Blood Angel's ability is good.
I didn't really rate it until I realised that you could do that with like throwaway light hits, and I think that would make because normally you're. I was thinking, you've got to shoot some tanks at something before you're going to get something with a follow-up attack. But actually, point defense or something like that, it's almost like marker lighting stuff,
tracer fire. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could take some Imperial Fist, Ultramarine
tactical squads,
land speeders.
Yeah.
Zoom them forwards, point defense, light them up, and then get the big heavy hitters in next round. So actually, I'm going to change my opinion. I think that I'm going to put them in A. I think that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Or rather, I like doing these episodes because you know how sometimes you kind of talk about things and you look at them in isolation and you think, I don't see the point in that. That doesn't seem to do much. And then you talk it through with somebody, as we've done now, and then the pieces start slotting together, and you might think of something which, an application that you hadn't considered before now. let's talk about the great Rabute Gilliman.
Rabute Gilliman, Lord of the
Silly
500
names.
worlds of Ultramar. The home world of the Ultramarines is Macragge. Ultramarines are cool. They've got a cool Roman aesthetic. They are tactical, strategic geniuses, not just in combat, but in everything outside of combat. They really kind of embodied the idea that Roman soldiers were also masons or other trades, and they would build as they go. Many Ultramarines have interests outside of warfare, in arts and philosophy. Rabute himself is very pragmatic. I forget which Primarch calls him the Avenging Bean Counter, but that was a very funny.
He's a statesman, isn't he? More
He's
than
a statesman.
anybody, his purpose is to govern, like as much as it is to fight, and they kind of very much sort of Gilliman represents what humanity could have been like after the Great Crusade if the heresy hadn't have happened. How humanity could have been brought together and prospered with good governorship.
Ultramar is a template for this entirely. It's a relatively lawful, expansive space. The citizens are, for the most part, treated well, even if they do live quite, straightforward, everything to the effort lives. Gilliman, kind of got quite lucky with his landing location as a child. Landing into a ruling class family that adopts you and takes you in. He is what happened if a Primarch has the kind of best chance at a head start, and he shows it. The Ultramarines get a lot of shit, I think, in Warhammer in general as a faction, especially in like the 40k space. I think for the heresy specifically, they very much don't deserve that. I think they're
one of the few which I think are cooler.
They are cooler in heresy than they are in 40k.
And 40k, they're very generic, aren't they?
They are the poster boys.
They have this whole kind of their whole approach to warfare is theoretical and practical. Like they encourage people to kind of like almost workshop their plans before doing it. Like the theoretical, this is what this is the theory about what we're going to do. Okay, practical, how are you going to do that? And everything they approach is kind of done from this theoretical, practical side, which I guess is almost like a bit of a precursor for what would be the Codex Astartes in future generations.
Gilliman basically creates the Space Marine how-to handbook.
But in the 40k, they're generic, boring because they are the Codex Astartes, whereas in Heresy, there's a lot more going on with that, and they're less kind of, I am Captain Boring. There's some really kind of interesting bits.
They have a ton of very cool characters as well. First one that comes to mind, I was chatting to Chris about this at the battle report I filmed on Friday. Nemiel, and the being censured for because creating practicals is Nemiel, isn't it, that gets censured for creating practicals? And he's like, okay, let's create a practical. What would happen with Marine versus Marine warfare? And his higher ups were shocked and appalled at that behavior. That the idea that Space Marines could kill other Space Marines in the practical was absurd and borderline treasonous. And basically gets to shove it in their faces when when the heresy starts, and it turns out that that is very much needed. Which is I think as a side note, is the genesis of the red helmet going to sergeants, right? Whereas before it was a mark of censure. After the heresy, that was seen as a mark of respect because, oh god, so many cool characters. some amazing books. The Calf series of books, with the Wordbearers, the Betrayal at Calf, just phenomenal. Really, just insane.
What's the name of that librarian character that Loken takes the Gladius from?
Tycho.
No, it's something like that, isn't it? We've talked about him before in previous. Tylos Rubio.
Tylos, that's it.
Tylos Rubio.
Yeah,
it's definitely something
Rubio's sword.
Yeah. Another cool kind of character. Again, he kind of is part of this kill team, isn't he? That's sent to try and take out Horus at Molech, and a librarian, which obviously had to put all of his powers to one side after the Council of Nicaea, and then sort of was later brought back in as this, to a specialist in the kill teams, and his sword goes to Loken, and the sword is a force sword, and Loken is not. He has no psychic ability, but yet to his knowledge, but yet the sword kind of still acts somewhat unbeknownst. He doesn't understand why it's doing it like this, but it still kind of
works.
It works beyond what it should be in the hands of somebody who's mundane.
Yeah, and just there's so many. I'm just, as I'm thinking about it, there's so many cool instances of just really cool Ultramarine storylines. Yeah, they're just wicked, and they get a lot of shit, and I don't think, especially in Heresy, they deserve it.
Of course, they turn up a little bit too late for the Heresy. They get trapped on the outside, don't they?
To no fault of their own.
Runestorm.
They do eventually. They do arrive though, and they very much help keep things, well, at least from what we know so far, keep things on track. At the immediate aftermath of the Siege of Terra and the death of the kind of death of the Emperor and the death of Horus.
When he's needed the most, right, to put the ashes together, I guess, and this ruined Imperium.
And if there is no one better to statesman a planet back together after almost total annihilation, right? So
I've just finished listening to the War of the Beast series of novels, and it's interesting. Like the name Guilliman becomes a badge of authority within the High Lords of Terra. The Lord Guilliman is like a role within the Council of Terra, even though they aren't Guilliman. It becomes the role that he fulfilled is kind of like the Lord of the the Council of Terra. The name is inherited down to like non-Primarchs in later years, and because he helped set all of that back up in the wake of the is that the Imperium Nihilus at that point, is it?
Yeah, just as that's birthed. So
what are you thinking then? Any more to add before we
no I think
somewhere?
That's a good it's either A or S, right? I think A.
I think I agree. Because he's not sanguineous.
He's not sanguineous, and also I feel like the background lore is obviously very in depth for the Ultramarines, but it's not as exciting as the Blood Angels. Whereas the Blood Angels have that whole ghoul to noble vampire vibe.
And they carry the plot with them. It's almost as if like everybody else is sort of support actors to the Blood Angels plot, which ultimately is the
getting Sanguinius to die at Terra in front of Horus.
Yeah. But like you say, I think Calth is a standout moment, and there's I don't know if it's a short story, but there was one about an Ultramarine sniper like operating on Calth, I think it was, like when it's all he's sort of almost talking to himself about, right, he's on his own, theoretical, practical, take this guy out, move on. Or was it Talon he was on?
Sniping's a good job, mate. Oh, I can't remember now.
Can't remember if they're on. I think they were on Talon. But yeah, definitely a little bit more kind of I'm torn, right? Are they better than Jagatai Khan and the Imperial Fists?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Are they not?
I don't know.
Think of Calf, and then think of like any other Imperial Fist moment that even compares to that. Like, what stands out to you more?
Well, basically, the entirety of the Imperial Fists get their day in the Siege of Terra.
Yeah, because that's the thing as well. They spent the entire heresy almost at Terra, right? Like, or the Sol system. So they
Yeah, I'm not going to argue A. I'm just making me wonder, like, do the other 3 legions below it justify being in B, or should they also be in A? But we're going to stick with that. We're going to stick with that, and we're going to let the people listening to us shout at us in the comments instead about how we're wrong. If you do want to do one of these, you can. I'll put the link to the tier maker in the comments, and you can have a go at making your own and share it on
Discord. Yeah, look, we're both in tune there.
There we go. Okay, let's
almost there.
Nearly there. 2 more to go.
Almost
We're going to go at the Salamanders. So they have Strength of Will. When making a morale check, a detachment that contains only Salamander models rolls 2d6 and chooses which result they prefer. In addition, all Salamander detachments in the army gain the Implacable special. This is, I think, is where I got a bit confused earlier on with the re-rolling of the d6. But yeah, so you're rolling 2 dice for your morale, and you're choosing if you want to stay in combat or not, and that's everything. Games are won and lost on morale, right? On things running off the table when you least want them to. I think that on its own is a really good ability to be able to effectively re-roll your morale test. The Implacable ability as well, as we discussed earlier on when we were talking about the Dark Angels, gives you an option of whether or not you want to stay in combat or if you want to fall back. So it again it gives you a lot of options. And I don't think there's much that I can talk about this really. I think both of those rules are really good. I'm not convinced it's S tier.
Oh, no.
But I am fairly certain that it is a solid A tier choice. Bordering on S tier.
Really?
It's used by everybody.
True.
Most of your detachments are going to have to make at least one morale check, and they're effectively getting a reroll on a 2+ or a 3+. So that they are much more likely to hang around. They're not going to withdraw from and flee from combat unless you want them to. There's nothing bad in that.
I'm just sad they don't get a flame weapon.
We don't have any of those kind of things, do we?
+1 CAF assaulting a building or something like that, just to...
Yeah. Everything comes back to CAF, though, doesn't it? They seem to be, these could do with this rule, and it's usually around CAF of some sort.
Or, I don't know, like half-range weapons gain, ignore cover. No, that'd be too strong. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. I get okay, yeah. I would accept A, I think, quite happily.
I mean, it's definitely better than a Blood Angels one, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Is it as good as the versatility that you get? I think the reason that I would still put Dark Angels as S tier is it gives you more options to play, and it gives you options to play around, and gives you strong ability. It gives you one of those abilities if you want it, and you could have one detachment with that ability and another detachment of something else, obviously without the reroll. So yeah, I think solid A tier. I don't think I've got much else to add to that other than good all round. Let's jump onto the lore.
Yep. So Salamanders, their Primarch is Vulcan, and they are from the Nocturne system. Primarily, is it Prometheus, which is like a
no, it's
Nocturne. It's just Nocturne, isn't it?
Nocturne, yeah,
in the Nocturne system. They are quite an interesting Quite an interesting legion. They're very hardy. They again are. It is classed as a death world, right? Nocturne.
Yes, well, it's basically a
Yeah.
volcanic ash
It's
planet, isn't it?
just a
Full of radiation from the sun, which is what
Mhm.
causes them to have this almost ebony skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is you know, there's dragons and like magma beings, and they are very much the yeah, salamanders, yeah, and they are very much the like hardy, you know, survivors, very very resilient. Their Primarch Vulcan is a perpetual, at least how we understand it.
Which we don't actually find that out until very late on in the series, because it's understood for a long time that he's dead and he's killed kind of just after or during the drop site massacre, and all the way up until probably about 2/3 through the book, like he is dead, and then it turns out that Vulcan lives.
Vulcan lives, baby.
As is repeated over and over and over again
Every
in the
publication.
Salamanders books.
Yeah. Actually, is it at all mentioned on the Legions Imperialis page anywhere? I don't think it is. Yeah, it's a bit of a meme, isn't it, with salamanders?
They're very human though as well, aren't they?
Yes,
they are
they're
like
known for their empathy.
Yeah, They're one of often Space Marines are detached from humanity. They don't quite understand humanity, but you know, the salamanders, we see it in 40k in things like Hell's Reach, where you know they will sacrifice themselves if it meant saving civilians or you know saving normal humans. Very noble in that respect. And yeah, there is an amazing fight. You know, obviously Vulcan awakens from his death, and learns that he can't die and that he's a perpetual, and he gets better at dying and coming back quicker. And there is a scene when he's fighting Magnus at the end,
mind bending,
where he's like, it's almost like the end of Doctor Strange, isn't it? When he's fighting, he's got that is it Galactus or somebody caught in that time loop where he's just constantly killing him, but then he's kind of coming back and going again. It's like, nope, we're stuck and we're going to keep doing this until you are dead. You know, he's literally atomized by Magnus at one point, and still he is able to come back. You know, he's beheaded, he's burnt, he's destroyed by psychic like fire or psychic abilities, like eviscerate, like everything, every possible way to die. He dies and suffers and comes back again, and then he is also then left after defeating Magnus. He is left guarding the Golden Throne, guarding Malkador as he watches over the Golden Throne while the Emperor is aboard the Vengeful Spirit. And one of the last Primarchs to hang around in the Imperium as well. Like he turns up in War of the Beast. You know, 1500 years later, all of the rest of them have either died or disappeared, and he dies again in the War of the Beast. But as far as the Imperium is concerned, he's dead. But you don't actually find out what happened to him. We know that he's a perpetual and that he's going to come back somewhere, but yeah, he dies, and then that's the last you kind of see of him.
Heresy book series wise, though,
if I was basing this on the Heresy book series
and just Heresy lore in general, yeah. The only one I can think of is Damnation of Pythos.
No, even that is bad.
It is awful. It's just not good.
I'm sorry, Salamander players. I just really don't get on with the books, and it's probably more the writing style of the author. I think that I don't, and it's literally like to the point where, like you said, it became a meme. Like it was all I was reading. I think it was it like something fire? I forget what it's called. One of them, it's Imperium Secundus kind of era, and it felt like every other line out of their first captain was "Vulcan lives, Vulcan lives, Vulcan lives, Vulcan lives, Vulcan lives," and it's just like shut the fuck up. And it's the only book out of all of the Heresy novels that I couldn't finish. I just got so annoyed with it and fed up with it. I had to close it, and then from that point on, I was like, I'm not going to read any more in the Salamanders series of books because I can't be arsed with that. I will bypass them all and I'll just watch everything else, which has probably tainted my opinion of them. Because Siege of Terra, amazing. Written by other authors, though, right?
Exactly.
I don't want to go too much on rag on the author who's done it, but like I just couldn't get on with it.
No.
Is my bias worthy of putting their based on all of the cool stuff though that we've just talked about? What happens in the battle with Magnus at the end? That feels harsh.
It does feel harsh. I think they're more interesting than Iron Hands. Whether they're sea level interesting, I mean, Space Wolves, right? I would rather read a Space Wolves novel in the Heresy 9 times out of 10 than a Salamanders.
I don't know if I would. I think
Really?
I would rather read a Salamanders book which was written by Dan Abnett or
I mean, yeah, but
Aaron Dembski Bowden.
Yeah. Okay, all right, yeah, no, that's fair. If they had like the same quality of author behind it, I think I'd probably also be more interested in the Salamanders than the Space Wolves. Yeah, put them in C. Put them in C. I do think D is a bit too harsh.
D is pure bias on my behalf, and I'm sorry to I just couldn't get on with the books. I feel like really they should maybe even be B, but I think at this point we're kind of we're talking about the lore and the stuff that happens with them, and really they come into their own right at the end. Another Shattered Legion,
exactly.
Not helped by some. I'm sure people disagree with me when it comes to that. If you really like Salamanders, I'm sure you loved the Salamanders series of books, but it just turned me off big style, and I found myself leaning more on what I liked about them towards the end and what I liked about them in 40k rather than what they contributed and what I liked in Horus Heresy.
Agreed.
Okay. Last one?
On to the last one. Let's do it.
The last one. Okay, so last up we have the Raven Guard. Nevermore, Johnny. Nevermore. So they have by Wing and Talon. So all detachments that contain only Raven Guard infantry models gain the Infiltrate special rule. Or if the formation has dedicated transports, that it does not gain this rule. All detachments that contain only Raven Guard cavalry or walker models, or Raven Guard infantry models with dedicated transports, gain the forward deployment special rule. Insane.
Insanely good.
Like, these are, I mean, as you would hope they would be, like, they almost left in the book the best to last with both these guys and the Alpha Legion. Very similar, both about infiltration. Whereas in the Alpha Legion get like a bit some outflanky sort of stuff. The Raven Guards gain the forward deployment with everything else. And we know that Infiltrate is just really, really strong in the current meta. But what this does mean is that I think it says if the formation has dedicated... Right, okay, so it's not like you can choose to infiltrate your infantry instead of mounting them in their dedicated transports. If you've given them dedicated transports, then
they have to forward deploy.
Yeah. But what you could do is take as transports some Land Raiders or some Spartans and then choose if you wanted to forward deploy those models in the land raiders and forward deploy them at the beginning and then move them up, or have them separate and have them infiltrating instead. Infiltrating is insanely good. Only that D tier loyalist ability will stop that, and even that you're still pushing them back 14 inches, which is not a huge distance away. It's going to stop the turn one charge, but that's all it's going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still going to allow people to start on the objective and cap things from right at the start of the game. I think that's
the big thing.
I think you talked about this with Chris over the weekend, from what I understand from talking to Chris, but like Legions Imperialis, where you are capping objectives and scoring points from turn one, is possibly one of the problems with the VP scoring points in the game at the moment, because things like infiltration, you're immediately on the back foot because you've got the wrong army. If you don't take something with infiltration that you can put on an objective, because you need to then shift that unit off of the objective before you start capturing points. It just makes it very, very difficult. I think that this having the option of either or, and the fact that it's on everything else, isn't it? Like, and it's not even by formation. It's not like all formations which contain entirely infantry models gain infiltrate. No, it's all detachments that contain only Raven Guard infantry models, and you're not likely to mix. I suppose it's only really going to be those new support formations they brought out, which got a little bit of like robots and stuff.
Yeah.
I guess that would be the example of a mixed. But even that is separate detachments. So yeah, I don't know what you would have which mixes detachments with
what about
non-Raven Guard models?
No, I can't think of
no. But they get everything. So your Demi Company, Legion Demi Company, all of your Assault Marines would start with Infiltrate. Your Tactical Marines would start with Infiltrate. Your Dreadnoughts would be that little bit closer at the start of the game as they moved up. Is it as good as the Alpha Legion one? Probably not, because that you can literally start more different types of stuff further up the board. But I think it is nearly, if not possibly equivalent, depending on the situation that you find yourself in. I think it's definitely as good as the Dark Angels ability that they have earlier on, and for that reason, I think it's S tier.
I think so. In the current state of the game, as objectives are counted at the end of turn one, absolutely. If they ever changed that and they made it so that objective scoring starts from turn two, that would probably shift. But
these guys, Pioneer Companies, Alpha Legion, they're the reason why you take 130 points of Space Wolves. It's to stop yourself getting charged on turn one. Because, you've seen that with your Harpax. Like, imagine if I had some Space Wolves, it would stop that Harpax starting 4 inches away from my guys, jetpacking over the top of my infantry and engaging my tanks behind me. This is why the Space Wolves ability it's almost like a tax on Infiltrate. You have to take that minimum formation so that you don't get screwed by infiltrating formations. For that reason, that's why I think it's only worth taking in the way that it is, and why Infiltrate is so strong. I mean, Infiltrate needs an FAQ. If they FAQ Infiltrate, and who knows, this episode may be very quickly,
knowing our luck,
out of date or something. But I think even if you said you can't charge on the turn that you infiltrate, I think that's fine, because you're still getting to hold up in, other buildings or garrison buildings far up on the table. You're able to start taking objectives from the start. I don't think it's gonna, just because you can't charge, will just make it from being ridiculously good and almost borderline overwhelming to fine, to still good, but like I can deal with that. I can deal with clawing back some objectives. What I can't deal with is being charged to turn one and my entire first turn being spent on Overwatch fire or removing models as I get charged, and I can't do anything about it. Yep. So in that reason, for me, definitely an S. Another Shattered Legion, though. Lost a lot of troops at the drop site massacre. Let's talk lore for these guys.
Hell yeah. So their Primarch is Corvus Corax, the Raven Lord. They are, from Deliverance, which is possibly the coolest homeworld name in the series. Their vibe is sneaky spec ops, infiltratey, as per the rules you've just seen. Actions that bring them behind enemy lines. They are quite vicious combatants. They are, I won't say cruel, but they have the ability to be ruthless, and they are quite often. They're really cool. They're very edgy, very emo.
Even to the extent where some of the models have got the old floppy side parting and stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Very sort of like late noughties to our younger viewers. Like, you know, oh, I hate you, teenagers.
Yeah. Crawling in my skin.
But they are kind of like a mixture, aren't they, between Alpha Legion and Night Lords? Like they deal with, like, they do kind of like Terra tactics, but not quite as extreme as what the Night Lords do, and they do infiltration, just not again quite to the extreme lengths that the Alpha Legion take.
Yeah, their Terra tactics isn't flaying, you know, and butchering and making examples of people. It's assassinating your general from 2 miles away with a Mordefian sniper squad, and sending people into a panic. They're very precise in their use of violence and their abilities. But yeah, they're really, really cool. And I'm trying to remember the name of the Raven Guard guy that absolutely fucks up Lucius. Dual Blades. What's his name? They have peerless fighters anyway.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. I keep thinking of Shrike, but he's 40k, isn't he?
Shrike's 40k, yeah. Oh god, it's going to bug me now. I really want to read that again as well. But so they are peerless combatants. They probably get the best work out of the Shattered Legions in terms of the Heresy. I think it's the most entertaining because it's all subterfuge and being,
it's all about
sneaky gits.
They're a lot more about stealth, aren't they? Because even their ships are kind of converted to kind of almost run stealthy in the void. And don't they have an ability or something where basically or maybe it's Corvus's ability, if he chooses he doesn't want to be seen by someone, he can basically just...
He literally melts into the shadows. Yeah. Which is badass. And
I think that's how he escapes, because he's imprisoned, isn't he? When he's growing up or something on Deliverance, and then he overthrows, if I recall correctly. It's been a long time since I read Deliverance Lost, but yeah. And then there's almost a tragic element at the end, isn't it, when he decides that he's had enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's they're a good Legion. You can tell it's getting late now.
Yeah.
I think the books, for the most part, are pretty solid. They do suffer from, like I said before, the Shattered Legions.
Doesn't he try to rebuild his Legion and it just goes horribly wrong or something?
Yeah, they use I think they find like... is it like cool, like a nod to the Primaris gene or something like that for 40k? and they find like this experimental gene seed or something that lets them grow.
Wasn't it corrupted or something by chaos or fallen?
But it was corrupted by chaos.
Something.
Yeah,
yeah. There was. I can't remember exactly. It's been so long since I read it.
Mm.
The only thing which
like
unfortunately
100 books in this bloody series.
The only thing which unfortunately sticks in my mind is kind of like just the really overly hammed like links to, is it Edgar Allan Poe with the Raven, Quoth said the Raven nevermore and all of that kind of stuff, to the point where like that's apparently the final thing that he says or something before he disappears into the warp to kind of find repentance or whatever. It's just kind of a little bit early Primarch writing.
Yeah,
like when they in the early 90s when they were writing a lot of this stuff and really defining what lastly would come. It's a bit twee and a bit silly,
bit on the nose, as with all of these, very on the nose.
Yeah, but yeah, like these guys turn up, don't they? Like there's always a few of them. They wreck shit and then they disappear
into the shadows. Yeah, it's like the Batman effect. They just
but
arrive and disappear when you look away. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're not a caricature. They just they're sleek, proficient,
and they're easy to paint.
And they're easy
they're
to
just
paint.
Black with a little bit white.
I guess if you're trying to paint black well, it's still kind of tricky.
Yeah, of course.
But
so last one of the night, then, Johnny.
Oh,
how is our Legion tier list looking, and where would we put?
I think it's the best of the Shattered Legions. I don't think it compares with some of the A tier Legions. I think
it's here. I can't put it here, but I think it's possibly right there.
Because it feels wrong to directly compare them to like the Dark Angels and Fists in my head specifically, but also every time they do show up, it's always fucking cool.
But they don't show up very often.
I think top of C tier. I mean, visually, I want to stick it in B because it will make a nice little pyramid, but realistically...
Oh, yeah, let's have a look at that. Oh, look at that.
See, that just, yeah.
But no, I think you're right. I think on par... Like, I would argue, I think Salamanders have got, for as much as I kind of griped about them a minute ago, their kind of arc is better and their ending is better and they have more massive set pieces, more impactful. They are more impactful on the Horus Heresy than Corax is. Corax doesn't do a whole lot for most of the Heresy. And like you say, it's all again, because they're shattered, there's not many of them to go and be impactful, and especially with the way that they fight. But I think that's fine. I think on a par with the Salamanders is about right.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
We did it.
We did.
It's been a long old episode, though, hasn't it?
It has.
And thank you for sticking with us. It's been really good. I really enjoyed this one. We don't do the really long podcasts very often, but I do really enjoy kind of chatting lore and shit when we get to do this. Like the rules, get that over and done in 5 minutes. I want to get to the actual lore discussion. What have we done dirty on, guys? Like what? What do you not agree with that we've got going on here? I'm sure that you've got opinions, and I really look forward to hearing what you've got to say in the comments. If you want to continue to sort of help us make content, as a quick reminder, always like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you don't do already. There's a lot of people who watch our videos who aren't subscribed. You know, we're only a little channel at this particular point in time. We're hoping to grow. We are growing steadily, like we've always been growing forwards, and it would be great to hit 3,000 subscribers by the sort of second half of the year, which I don't think is not impossible. But to do that, we're going to need you guys to kind of spread the word, help us out, like us, subscribe, help get the algorithm to push our content through. If you do like the kind of more chatty podcasts that we do rather than the analysis, we have the Noosphere. Noosphere is our Patreon special podcast where we generally just talk hobby and talk shit. And a lot of people enjoy kind of just listening to us while painting or putting us on in the background, where effectively it feels like they're kind of participating in a Discord channel or something. That we're just chatting away about what we're up to.
We take Patreon questions as well that we usually cover on the Noosphere as well. So
yeah, so if you want a bit more of a direct link to myself and Johnny, or you've got more questions that you want to hear our opinions on, or ideas of things that you want to see in the show, then checking into the Noosphere, following our Patreon and backing us from £3 to get access to the Noosphere episodes, as well as 10% off of Battle Bling and 15% off of Battle Builder for your nameplates. That's how you get about doing that. Or if you just want to kind of help keep us going, then you can back us for as little as £1 a month, and every little helps, and we do really appreciate the support. But yes, I guess this was our 2,500 subscriber special episodes.
We put it off long enough.
We did put it off long enough. Not as long as the Traitor Legions Ranked for Adeptus Titanicus.
That will happen.
Yeah, so we keep saying. But now that we've actually got a proper diary of when we're going to get together, maybe we'll have to make that happen. I might even, I might need to say, you know what, I've had this one on my plate for a couple of years, Johnny. Take it away, and you do the Traitor Legions Ranked to try and get it actually to a point where
I just like the big robots. I don't know the dice rolling and stuff.
But yeah, thank you very much, guys. Yeah, I guess that's all we've got left to say for the night. So, as always, this is episode 40, by the way. So this is like quite a nice little milestone.
The podcast's having its midlife crisis. Life is good.
Basically, yeah. And just I'll mention this now. I had a little bit of drama with Spotify. So if you are an RSS watcher of our shows at the moment, or new to the show, you may notice that some of our earlier episodes are currently not available. This is why, while I have a bit of an argument with Spotify about them seeming to think that our shows contain copyright music, when the actuality is that all of our music is Creative Commons and therefore free use. They disagree, but I've had to take down a few episodes, unfortunately. While I resolve that, I'll get them up as quickly as I can, and hopefully nothing else gets impacted. Damn you, corporate people.
It's all bots.
All bots, yeah.
All bots.
And the chat people are not helpful. But anyway, that's
probably also all bots.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Now we know they're outlawed in Heresy.
I hate bots. I hate bots. Awful. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys. We will see you again next time. And always remember to go big, go loud, and
go Maximal.